Chapter 646. Although he was still in the yuaning stage, Xiao Yan was already the #1 alchemist in Xianmen Tianzong. Of course, in the eyes of others, including Xiao Yan himself, this statement excluded Lin Feng. But of course Lin Feng himself is well aware in his heart that Xiao Yan's pill refining level indeed surpasses his master. This thing is not completely the same as a cultivator's cultivation level. People with high cultivation level, their pill refining level may not be stronger than people with low cultivation level. It involves many factors. Therefore, Lin Feng naturally entrusted the alchemy room to Xiao Yan, and Xiao Yan also enjoyed it. If it were someone else, this might delay their own cultivation. But for Xiao Yan, he had to constantly study the power of the true fire during the alchemy process, which was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But soon, Xiao Yan had to come out of the alchemy room, because Xiao Zhen'er was about to leave the mountain. She and Xiao Yan had reunited in the void battlefield for a long time, and she couldn't bear to be separated, so she decided to go back to Yujing Mountain with Xiao Yan. Strictly speaking, the girl was even suspected of running away from home. In the past few days, the ancient brush spirit was asked by Xiao Zhen'er's family to come to Kunlun Mountain to visit. Her words were very polite, but the meaning was clear. She was going to bring Xiao Zhen'er back to her family. It was not that she was clearly against the relationship between Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen'er, but it was more beneficial for Xiao Zhen'er to return to her family for cultivation. The ancient emperor had high hopes for Xiao Zhen'er and had a special training plan. Although Yujing Mountain was a rare place, it was not as good as Luo Qingwu. Just like the Yin-Yang Sea was the most suitable place for Luo Qingwu to cultivate, Xiao Zhen'er's family also had the most suitable environment and resources for her to cultivate. Of course, the ancient emperor's bloodline indeed still has doubts and divergences regarding the relationship between Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhe. The Battle of West Hill City affected not only the divine land, but also the ancient emperor. The unexpected rise of Xianmen Tianzong forced them to think about more things. Lin Feng didn't care too much about this. It was completely voluntary. If Xiao Zhen'er wanted to stay, her father would come to him in person, and Lin Feng would also support his eldest disciple to the end. If Xiao Zhen'er wanted to leave, Lin Feng would not force her to stay. Xiao Yan was quite open-minded. He gently combed Xiao Zhen'er's hair, smiled and said, "Don't worry, wait for me at home. I will go to your clan again. This time, it will be an honorable visit." Xiao Zhen'er also smiled faintly. Xiao Yan Gij has to hurry up and cultivate. Zhen'er has heard that among Senior Lin's direct disciples, no matter if it's recently forming nascent soul or before forming core, Xiao Yan Gij, this big senior brother, is not the fastest one. The girl's smile was a bit mischievous. Xiao Yan's face became slightly hot after being teased by her. He coughed and said, "The ones in front are nothing. I will wait for them in Yuanshen." "Eldest disciple, don't make us wait too long." Shi Tianhao laughed and said. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and the others all shook their heads and laughed. Everyone cupped their hands at Xiao Zhen'er and said, "Miss Zhen'er, take care." Xiao Zhen'er also bowed and said, "Brothers, take care too." She looked at the little girl in Xiao Yan's arms and said, "Tonga, take care too." Lin Tong looked at Xiao Zhen'er with tears in her eyes and asked, "Mother, are you really leaving?" Xiao Zhen'er smiled and said, "Godmother will come back to see Tonger in the future." She wasn't trying to coax the child, it was the truth. As her cultivation level grew, she had more and more power in the clan. Plus, as Xianmen Tianzong's influence grew day by day and Xiao Yan's personal strength grew stronger, Xiao Zhen'er had a relatively easy time. Lin Tong saw that Xiao Zhen'er had made up her mind, so she turned her face away and pouted. "Then let's go. Tonger won't miss you." Even though she said that, she reached out her chubby little hand and tightly grabbed Xiao Zhen'er's sleeve. She bit her lips and tears were about to fall down. These days, Xiao Yan was busy cultivating and breaking through the Yuaning realm. After forming his nascent soul, he was busy with the Xiantian realm's affairs and alchemy. Xiao Zhen'er and Lin Tong, on the other hand, were very close. When Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen'er saw this, they hurriedly pacified the little girl together. With great difficulty, they managed to coax the little girl to stop her tears. She looked pitifully at Xiao Zhen'er. Mother, you have to come back often to see Tong and father. Xiao Zhener touched her head and said, Godmother will. After saying goodbye to Lin Tong, Xiao Zhener came to Lin Feng and solemnly bowed and said, Senior Lin, thank you for your care and guidance these days. I can't thank you enough. She paused and said, When I go back this time, I will have a good talk with my father. This was the reason why she was willing to leave the mountain with the ancient brush spirit. Lin Feng smiled and said, Miss Zhener, you are too polite. Please send my regards to your father. Xiao Zhener bowed and said, I will definitely bring senior's regards. I will leave the ancient emperor's saber to you. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, You can take it with you. Xiao Zhener hesitated and said, I dare not refuse a gift from an elder. Thank you, Senior Lin. The ancient brush spirit smiled bitterly at the side. After sending Xiao Zhener and the ancient brush spirit away, Lin Feng smiled and looked at the disappointed Xiao Yan and said, I have given you the betrothal gift. Whether you can get a wife or not is up to you. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and nodded and said, Don't worry, master. Since I promised Zhener, I will visit her openly in the future. I will not go back on my words. Lin Feng smiled and pointed at Zhu Yi and the others and said, You guys, I am also waiting. Zhu Yi smiled and said, A graceful lady is a gentleman's desire, but it is not something that can be rushed. She must be like eldest senior brother and Miss Zhener, who are in love with each other and live in harmony. Xiao Zhener's departure from the mountain was just a small interlude. Xianmen Tianzong, which was already on the right track, would continue to develop normally. After the initial development of the Xianmen realm, it became more and more popular. With the support of the Qin dynasty, the immigration plan was also officially launched. However, the first to enter the Xianmen realm were the Shao clan led by Xiao Yan's grandfather, old clan leader Shao, and some of Wang Lin's clansmen. They had left their homes and lived in the Sand Continent. Now that they had immigrated to the Xianmen realm, there was naturally nothing to miss. Although the Xianmen realm was newly developed, it was originally very barren and far less prosperous than the Sand Continent city. However, Lin Feng had once again built a teleportation formation, which facilitated the transportation between the entrance of the Xianmen realm and the Cloud Mirror City as well as the Sand Continent city. Secondly, people with foresight like old clan leader Shao could see the importance and huge potential of the Xianmen realm to Xianmen Tianzong. The earlier they entered, the more opportunities they would have for development. Similarly, there were also some of Shi Tianhao's clansmen. When Shi Zongyue came to visit, he met Shi Zhongtian. Speaking of which, Shi Zongyue and Shi Zhongtian could be considered old acquaintances. However, Shi Zongyue was much older and had reached the primordial spirit realm a long time ago. Before Shi Zhongtian entered the void battlefield, he was only a Yuanian cultivator. However, Shi Zongyue also congratulated Shi Zhongtian on his return. Shi Zhongtian also wanted to return to the Shi clan to take a look. Right now, there were some old brothers that he liked to take care of the situation. After Shi Zhongtian had recovered from his injuries, he immediately returned to the Shi clan's ancestral land. Shi Tianhao also accompanied him. Xianmen Tianzong's reputation was currently at its peak. The Shi clan naturally hoped to improve the relationship between the two sides and get closer to Xianmen Tianzong. However, Lin Feng imposed a certain limit on their application to enter the Xianmen realm. He didn't want the background of the Xianmen realm's immigrants to be too complicated. It would be best if they were from the secular world. It wouldn't be a problem if they produced cultivator clans in the future, but now he had to impose a limit. If cultivator clans that already had a foundation entered the Xianmen realm, even if they restrained themselves, they would appear to be superior to the ordinary immigrants. For example, the Shao clan, where Xiao Yan came from, was already at its limit. The Shi clan was also aware that the immigrants they sent were all branches of the Shi clan. These branch families originally had a lower status in the Shi clan, but now they benefited from it and hitched a ride on the Xianmen realm. The vigorous development of the Xianmen realm provided a strong guarantee for Xianmen Tianzong's own development. Large amounts of resources were supplied to Xianmen Tianzong. However, in terms of population, they still needed a longer period of reproduction to reach a sufficient scale. Lin Feng had done some tests and found that the flow of time in the Shenmen realm was actually different from that of the colossal world. The overall flow of time in the Shenmen realm was about 4 times faster than that of the colossal world. 1 year in the colossal world was equivalent to 4 years in the Shenmen realm. Even so, it would still take a long time for the population to reproduce. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry. He stayed on Mount Yujing and taught the existing disciples in the sect while trying to figure out his own Dao arts. It was the same for Xiao Yan and the others. Compared to Lin Feng, who stayed on Mount Yujing, the few of them often went down the mountain for a stroll. On one hand, they could increase their knowledge and experience, and on the other hand, they could travel the world and search for some talented disciples to bring back to Mount Yujing, further expanding the sect's talent pool. Time passed by slowly. Soon, 3 years had passed in the outside world. Many forces in the human cultivation world in the Divine Land suddenly discovered that the legendary Shenmen Tianzong had suddenly become quiet in recent years. Although no one dared to ignore it as it dominated Kunlun, it was not the focus of the Divine Land almost all the time like it was in the beginning. It was no longer showing off, but a deep and majestic momentum of an eternal foundation was quietly accumulating and gradually taking shape. What many small and medium-sized forces were concerned about was that not only Shenmen Tianzong, but also the super forces such as the Qin dynasty and the Great Zhou dynasty were also quiet in recent years. Shenmen Tianzong and other forces formed a united front to target Taishu Temple. However, there seemed to be a tacit understanding between the United Front and Taishu Temple. Although they were vaguely opposed, after the Battle of West Hill City, no one rashly stirred up trouble. Mount Shu Sword Sect, which was at odds with Shenmen Tianzong and had an even sharper conflict, was also content with the status quo, as if all the previous grievances did not exist. Compared to the days of Shenmen Tianzong's strong rise, the tone of the past 3 years could be described with one word: calm. But when people with discerning eyes looked at the calm Divine Land, they were actually anxious. They all smelled a different atmosphere, like the last calm before the storm. On Mount Yujing, as one of the giants of the Divine Land, Lin Feng naturally had a clearer grasp of the overall situation of the past 3 years than those who were looking at flowers through fog. However, his mind was calm, and his attention was focused on another matter: planting flowers and trees. Chapter 647. Lin Feng stood calmly in the dark heaven-timeless cave. In front of him was a 3-legged cauldron. The cauldron was engraved with images of mountains and rivers. It was as if thousands of miles of mountains and rivers were carved in metal. It was the magic treasure of the mountain and river lord of the past, the Void Mountain and River Cauldron. Around the Void Mountain and River Cauldron, there were 9 small bronze cauldrons. They formed a formation, but they did not surround and protect the Void Mountain and River Cauldron in the center. After the 9-child and mother bronze Void Cauldron was gathered, it immediately showed a difference. Although it was 9 yuanying magic treasures, after forming a formation, it faintly formed a strange resonance with the Void Mountain and River Cauldron, which was a primordial soul magic treasure. The formation formed by the 9-child and mother bronze Void Cauldron stimulated a strange and unique power, shaking the void. Seeing this, Lin Feng knew that what Chao Wei said was true. The 9-child and mother bronze Void Cauldron was indeed not refined by the mountain and river lord. On the contrary, although they were 9 yuanying magic treasures, they were not magic treasures. In fact, the formation formed by the 9 cauldrons was the key to the mountain and river lord's primordial soul Dao. The Void Mountain and River Cauldron was a magic treasure that he refined after he reached the primordial soul realm. However, the power of the two was vaguely of the same origin. Although there were differences, they could also resonate and faintly complement each other, helping each other. When the two were combined, the 10 cauldrons formed a brand new formation. It broke through the void and indeed led to a path that seemed to be there. Lin Feng flicked his finger, and a stream of green water flowed into the Void Mountain and River Cauldron. In the 3-legged cauldron, there was a strange tree growing at the moment. The roots of the tree went deep into the Void Mountain and River Cauldron. The roots and the lower half of the tree trunk were as red as fire, emitting an extremely high temperature. There were even flames jumping on the roots and trunk from time to time, but it did not hurt the tree at all. Bathed in the fire, the life force of the tree became stronger. However, looking up, the upper half of the tree trunk and the branches and leaves were ice blue, as if it was in the middle of winter. It was covered in snow and frost. Even the leaves seemed to be formed from ice crystals. This was Lin Feng's frigid ice cornucopia. After planting and cultivating it, it had grown into a faded firewood. This tree was special. It was very difficult to cultivate and grow, and its growth was extremely slow. Even the heavenly luck spirit soil had a limited effect. Lin Feng had spent a lot of effort to cultivate this tree and grow it to its current size. The karmic fire tree continued to grow. Its branches extended upwards, passing through the 10 cauldron formations passageway, all the way to the outer realm. It was like a bridge that spanned the heavenly moat. Lin Feng took a step forward, passing through the branches of the karmic flame tree and heading deeper into the void, following the path that had been pointed out. As he walked, Lin Feng suddenly felt that something was wrong. Such a powerful realm power, it feels like it only exists between the vast land of the divine continent and the infinite wasteland. Could it be that this path leads to the demon world's infinite wasteland? The feeling of the two worlds clashing against each other gradually disappeared, and the passageway came to an end. Lin Feng tore open the void and looked over, only to see an ancient desolate mountain range. After carefully sensing the flow of spirit chi here, Lin Feng had an idea. It's not the infinite mainland. Instead, it's sandwiched between the divine land and the infinite mainland. A gap was formed due to the compression, but it eventually expanded into an outer realm space. However, I'm not the first person to step foot into this outer realm space. Lin Feng frowned slightly. His figure moved and he stopped again. He was already deep in the mountain range. Standing in the sky, Lin Feng looked down. There was a faint cyclone in the mountain range, leaping like a black hole. Lin Feng pointed at the cyclone and it dissipated rapidly. Lin Feng raised his brows. Interesting. A cloud of purple gas rapidly surged out, wrapping around the cyclone that was about to dissipate. Lin Feng carefully felt the energy fluctuations within, his expression becoming slightly more serious. The heavenly charm, great sage, have you already grasped a bit of it? In the Battle of West Hill City, Lin Feng had joined forces with the Great Qin, Great Zhou, Purple Heaven Dao, Northern Militant Royal Court and other factions to stand against Taishu Temple and remove the Heavenly Pool sect from the territory of the Divine Land. In the end, Taishu Temple remained silent. The reason was actually because of the unusual movements of the demon realm in the Infinite Mainland. Many demons in the Infinite Mainland who were originally in seclusion became restless. Ever since the war between the two worlds, the scale was unprecedented. Even some powerful demons who did not participate in the war between the two worlds suddenly became active. Ever since the war between the two worlds, compared to the human cultivation world, the battles between the demons were more intense. This caused the overall strength of the demons to recover more slowly. However, this was under the situation where many of the demons that had always been in seclusion were excluded. Now that these great demons had reappeared in the world, it instantly increased the pressure on the humans. Therefore, this situation immediately attracted the attention of Taishu Temple. When Lin Feng and the rest received the news, they were also rather concerned. There were signs that the enchantress, who had snatched a portion of Yudu Minghua in the Cloud Forest world, could use his own cultivation of the primordial demon canon and Yudu Minghua to deduce the first volume of the Heavenly Dao Demon Scripture and even the marvel of the entire Heavenly Dao Demon Scripture. Heavenly Dao Demon Scripture was the supreme cultivation method of the demon race. The enchantress could just rely on the second volume of the primordial demon canon to roam heaven wasteland and be known as the head of the 10 saints of the demon race. Ever since Yu Huang Tianhai had fallen and the Yudu race had gone missing, the complete Heavenly Dao Demon Scripture was declared lost. The most mysterious first volume, especially, had been completely buried without a trace. If the enchantress could reproduce the complete Heavenly Dao Demon Scripture, no matter if it was the Divine Land or Heaven Wasteland, it would be a violent earthquake. The influence would be far-reaching, no inferior to the sudden rise of Xianmen Tianzong. The scene of Yu Huang Tianhai shattering great thunderclap monastery's creation treasure, Mount Meru, despite being besieged by the Haotian mirror and immortal heaven sword, flashed in the minds of the strong practitioners of the human race who had survived that battle, and it made them shudder. The reason why the alliance led by the celestial sect of Xian and the Void Temple had been at peace for the past few years was, to a large extent, because both sides had placed their attention on the vast heaven wasteland. The possibility of the heavenly Tao demon scripture reappearing stimulated the demon race more than the human race. The great demons naturally weren't willing to be inferior to humans. They all eyed the heavenly Tao demon scripture covetously, but they were even more wary of the human race. At that moment, between the divine land and heaven wasteland, it was like an active volcano that was about to erupt. The temporary calm was only accumulating power, indicating an even more violent eruption. Lin Feng was in this foreign dimension and intercepted the cyclone. He carefully sensed the changes in the demonic power, and it was vaguely similar to the demonic power of the enchantress. Through the concept of power, Lin Feng could be sure that the enchantress's power had increased compared to before. However, she should only be at the beginning of deriving the complete version of the heavenly Tao demon scripture. As time passed, her progress would definitely increase until she finally succeeded. His previous guess was confirmed. The enchantress didn't have hope of reproducing the heavenly Tao demon scripture. She had already made substantial progress. It was no wonder that the enchantress had disappeared. She must have hidden herself and gone into seclusion to seek a greater breakthrough. This foreign dimension was actually a place where she had gone into seclusion. It's a pity that I can't strike first. Lin Feng thought to himself, you're preparing, so am I. You need time, so do I. Let's see who's faster. Lin Feng waved his hand and guided the power aura of the 10 Cauldrons array on Yujing Mountain into this foreign dimension. Immediately, the mountain range flashed with light. The enchantress only discovered this place by accident. She felt that it was rather hidden, so she stayed for a few days to cultivate before leaving. However, she didn't have the 10 Cauldrons array, so she couldn't discover the true mysteries of this foreign dimension. Lin Feng looked at the flashing light in the mountain range and thought to himself, Ding of Shenzhou isn't here. However, just like the enchantress, Ding of Shenzhou had stayed in this foreign dimension before. Forming hand seals with both hands, Lin Feng used his dermic powers to further stimulate the light. The light immediately turned into a light illusion. Stars shone in the light illusion as if the stars were right in front of them. Seeing this, Lin Feng was quite surprised. This is the desolate ancient star ocean? The desolate ancient star ocean was a vast foreign dimension similar to the void space battlefield. It was independent of the major thousand worlds, but it was not a pure medium-class world. This foreign dimension was extremely mysterious. It was directly connected to the vast universe and the dazzling stars. In the desolate ancient star ocean, it was easier to absorb and refine the power of the stars than anywhere else. It was even easier to refine the entire star. In the primordial era, this was the paradise of the demon race. Later on, the human race rose and produced many experts. During the reign of the Grand Emperor, the primordial era ended. The human race and the demon race lived separately in the divine land and infinite wasteland. The desolate ancient star ocean fell into the hands of the human race and became the territory and residence of the human race's sacred emperors. Until the end of the primordial era, when the ruthless sovereign was overthrown, the human race's strength was greatly reduced. The demon race took the opportunity to start another war between the two worlds and took back the desolate ancient star ocean. After the last sacred emperor of the demon race died in the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea, there were no more sacred emperors of the demon race. Therefore, the few realm passageways that led to the desolate ancient star ocean were divided and occupied by the most powerful forces of the demon race. After the great sage of the demon race reached the second level of the undying demon soul, the primordial true spirit level, he had to start refining the power of the stars into his body and finally reach the third level of the undying demon soul, the star soul as one level. After reaching the star soul as one level, he could still refine more stars into his undying demon soul. Therefore, to the demon race, obtaining the desolate ancient star ocean was extremely beneficial. After the primordial era, the human race had always wanted to take back this place but had never succeeded. For the human race, the power of the stars was also the top power in the world. If they could obtain it, it would be extremely beneficial. Lin Feng looked at the shining starlight in the illusion of light and shadow and muttered to himself, "So that's how it is." The disappearance of Ding of Shenzhou is actually related to the desolate ancient star ocean. He carefully analyzed the illusion of light and shadow. This illusion of light and shadow was created by Ding of Shenzhou's divine art magic power. It isn't a real realm passageway that leads to the desolate ancient star ocean. However, through this illusion of light and shadow, the divine arts practitioners have the ability to open a path for themselves. Even if I'm not in a hurry to open it now, I can still receive the starlight in it to cultivate. It has endless uses. Lin Feng pondered for a moment and thought to himself, there's a lot of room for maneuvering in here. He controlled the 10 cauldrons formation to temporarily seal the illusion of light and shadow. Then, he returned to Jade Capital Mountain and temporarily cut off the path. He summoned Xiao Yan and the other direct disciples to him. Spread the word that our sect will be accepting disciples for the 3rd time in a few days. At the same time, we will be holding the first internal competition of the sect and inviting the people of the same Dao to come and watch the ceremony. All of you, go down the mountain now and set up a few locations to accept disciples. Then bring them back to the mountain together. Chapter 648. The news that Xianmen Tianzong was accepting disciples for the 3rd time spread throughout the Divine Land in a very short period of time, once again shocking the world. The opening of the mountain gate this time was also different from the previous 2 times. Lin Feng sent Xiao Yan, Zhu and the others out, each occupying a place and separately recruiting people to become disciples and then bringing them back to the mountain together. In this way, Xianmen Tianzong's prestige was more far-reaching and more intuitive, which made it more convenient for those who wanted to be his disciples to come to him. Lin Feng chose several places carefully. He didn't poach too many people from friendly forces, but he didn't deliberately avoid them either. Although he had been low-key in recent years, no one would ignore the power of Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng also ordered Xiao Yan and the others to send invitations to all the experts in the Divine Land to Kunlun Mountain to attend the ceremony. The place set up by Zhu was located in the territory of the Great Zhou Dynasty, close to the mountain gate of Purple Cloud Path. He was also responsible for the invitation of these 2 forces. Dao Master Lan Ting of Purple Cloud Path received Zhu. Zhu handed him Lin Feng's letter. After receiving the letter, Dao Master Lan Ting passed it to Dao Master Lei Yun. Dao Master Lei Yun took the letter and read it. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Senior brother Lan Ting, it seems that I have to go to Kunlun Mountain in person." Not only Dao Master Lei Yun, but all the big shots who received the letter were also moved. Almost all of them made the decision to go to Kunlun Mountain to attend the ceremony. Although it was said to be a ceremony, everyone knew in their hearts that this was a meeting led by the Celestial Sect of Wonders. After the battle in West Hill City, Xianmen Tianzong's reputation reached a new peak. In the camp against the Taishu Temple, he vaguely occupied a leading position. After that, Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong chose to develop steadily and no longer continue to be in the limelight. However, now that Lin Feng had issued an invitation for the first time, the major forces still responded one after another. Moreover, almost all of them were led by major figures. The alliance meeting this time was bound to be huge, and its influence would be far-reaching. However, in addition to the giants, the outstanding descendants of the younger generation of the major forces also followed their seniors to Kunlun Mountain. This time, aside from accepting disciples, Xianmen Tianzong would also hold a competition among their disciples. At the same time, they would invite the young disciples of other factions to exchange pointers and learn from each other. The nature of the competition was similar to that of the Barons' Sea Assembly. For the other forces, this was a rare opportunity. Everyone wanted to see if the younger disciples of Xianmen Tianzong were equally outstanding. Lin Feng's direct disciples, Xiao Yan and the others, were already well known and recognized as the most outstanding young talents in the Divine Land. Their limelight had even overshadowed the Taishu Temple, which was known as the gathering place of geniuses. However, if a sect wanted to prosper for a long time, it couldn't just rely on one generation. Instead, it had to rely on the joint efforts and inheritance of several generations. Therefore, this time, everyone wanted to see the standard of the younger disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. Could they guarantee that the reputation that Xiao Yan and the others had built would not decline? Over the past 3 years, Xianmen Tianzong's direct disciples had left Yujing Mountain from time to time. They left the Yunfeng Mirror Lake and went to other places to train. Some went to the Shentian realm in their own backyard, and some went to other regions. Some even left Xianmen Tianzong's traditional territory and went to the Kunlun mountain range. The direct disciples of Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others, such as Lu Xiaofeng, Su Yunxing, and Li Xingfei, had also gradually gained fame and never suffered losses. However, the other major factions, such as the Qin dynasty, the Zhou dynasty, the Reincarnation sect, and even the descendants of Mount Shu Sword sect and Taishu Temple, had never come into contact with them. Therefore, the strength of the second-generation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong was still a mystery to the outside world. This grand ceremony was undoubtedly a very good opportunity. It was an opportunity for Xianmen Tianzong and the other factions. Everything depended on whether the younger disciples of Xianmen Tianzong had real skills. If they had real skills and did not tarnish the reputation of their predecessors, it would make the reputation of Xianmen Tianzong even more resounding in the Divine Land. Xianmen Tianzong would no longer be a newly established sect supported by Lin Feng and a few other disciples. Instead, it would truly have the aura of a holy land. If they did not have real skills, it would not really damage the reputation of Lin Feng and the others. However, for the overall reputation of Xianmen Tianzong, there was no doubt that it would be a setback. It would cause Xianmen Tianzong, which had been on the rise, to suffer a slight setback. Of course, Lin Feng himself was very clear about the stakes involved. However, his current state of mind had gradually changed, and he did not care too much about it. When a sect was newly established, people's hearts were not stable. Because of the brilliant achievements of Lin Feng and his disciples, the younger disciples were naturally excited and full of morale. However, it was inevitable that there would be some impetuosity, and even arrogance would spread. Lin Feng even heard arguments such as, "Shu Mountain is nothing, and the disciples of Taishu Temple are only fit to carry our shoes," from the new foundational disciples, which made him not know whether to laugh or cry. It was good to have confidence, but confidence without strength would be a joke. This was also a hurdle that all newly established sects had to go through. When the seniors established the country and everything went smoothly, the younger generation often became arrogant. However, once they suffered a setback, they might not be able to recover. They would doubt themselves and blindly worship the outside world. To develop a bearing that would not be affected by honor or disgrace, it required both strength and experience. Lin Feng was not interested in raising a group of spoiled brats. He was protective, but the premise was that the disciples in his sect had to live up to his expectations. Increasing communication with the outside world would allow the younger disciples to broaden their horizons, so that they would not be frogs at the bottom of a well. It would also be good for their current and future growth. Of course, although that was the case, the threshold for Lin Feng to accept disciples had always been high. The overall level of the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong was still very top-notch. The total potential of the second-generation disciples was around 25, and there were even many who were above 25. Coupled with the improvement of the Heaven Spirit replenishing pill, the superior cultivation environment and sufficient resources on Jade Capital Mountain, and the strong support of the Taoist techniques of Xianmen Tianzong, in the entire world of human cultivators, their innate quality and acquired environment were very outstanding. Even young cultivators with the same potential would find it difficult to beat the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. However, there was always a possibility. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, this kind of son of heaven was indeed hard to find, but monstrous people like Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu who had a total potential of 30 or more in all 4 aspects, even though they were rare to the point that they were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, it wasn't that they didn't exist. Wasn't Xiao Zhener an example? Although Shi Tianyi and Liang En, the Marquis of Jinghuan, were inferior to Xiao Yan and the others, they might not be much worse than Yu Hongyan and the others. Shi Xingyun and Jiao Junshin were also outstanding talents who were suspected to have a total potential of 30. Of course, this was referring to talent. A person's true strength was related to many aspects. However, the existence of these people indicated that other forces could also have such outstanding people. Taishu Temple, Mount Shu Sword Sect, the Great Zhou, and the Great Qin all had strong enough conditions to ensure that these geniuses could be nurtured to the best of their abilities. Would Su Yunxing, Ying Lejia, and the others be able to handle these people? Therefore, Lin Feng finally decided to invite the big shots of the various forces to attend the ceremony. At the same time, he also wanted them to bring their young talents to challenge them. He wanted to interact more with his own disciples and help his own disciples wake up and broaden their horizons. Lin Feng sincerely hoped that the geniuses of the other forces could attend. This kind of clash between top-notch geniuses was also a kind of promotion for the growth of his own disciples. Moreover, Lin Feng's goal was to let his own disciples broaden their horizons. He did not really want them to go up and seek abuse. He wanted them to temper their hearts and not destroy their self-confidence. The purpose of finding a whetstone was to sharpen the blade, not to break it. If the other party really had people like Shi Tianyi, Liang En, Shi Xingyun, and Jiao Junshin, he also had people waiting here. After Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu, Lin Feng did not accept any more personal disciples. Xianmen Tianzong began to operate from top to bottom. Naturally, it would not let go of its own backyard, the Heaven Mystic Realm. 3 years in the boundless world was 12 years in the Heaven Mystic Realm. The first generation of immigrants had gradually grown up, and it was time to harvest. The Kunlun Mountains, which had been peaceful for a long time, became lively again. A group of Xianmen Tianzong true disciples scattered around the mountain range around the Yunfeng Mirror Lake to serve as receptionists. With the Mirror Lake as the center, Lin Feng designated a no-fly zone, within a radius of 1,000 li outsiders could fly near, but it was strictly forbidden to travel through space or directly break through the void. This rule was already widely known. Although fellow Taoists were invited to come and watch the ceremony, this rule was not invalid. However, out of courtesy, the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong took the talismans and went 1,000 li away. They spread out in all directions, quietly waiting for the arrival of the guests, and then led them to the mountain gate at the Yunfeng Mirror Lake. Seniors and fellow Taoists, please follow me. I hope you will not blame me for my lack of manners. The northern militant First Chanyu personally came to the Kunlun Mountains. With him as the leader, a group of northern militant powerhouses were led by a purple-clothed young man to fly in the air toward the Yunfeng Mirror Lake. The purple-clothed young man was tall and handsome. His attitude was gentle, but he had a masculine and heroic aura. He flew with the magic power of the jade talisman in his hand. Although his cultivation was only at the late foundation establishment stage, he was neither servile nor overbearing when facing the northern militant First Chanyu and the others. Of course, the First Chanyu and the other powerhouses did not deliberately release their aura to oppress the purple-clothed young man. The purple-clothed young man led the guests near the Yunfeng Mirror Lake. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the void, and Zhu Yi, dressed in a purple robe and dressed like a scholar, stepped out. Disciple greets master. The purple-clothed young man hurriedly saluted. Zhu Yi nodded. Yunxing you go. Master will receive the First Chanyu's group. After finishing the recruitment work in the outside world and sending the disciples back to the Kunlun Mountains, Zhu Yi and the others stayed at the Yunfeng Mirror Lake to receive the big shots like the northern militant First Chanyu. The purple-clothed young man was Su Yunxing. He respectfully said, "Disciple obeys." After saluting the northern militant First Chanyu and the others, he left. He held the jade talisman in his hand and returned to his previous position. There were other Xianmen Tianzong disciples there. Seeing him come, They all greeted him. Senior apprentice Brother Su. Among the direct disciples, Su Yunsheng had cultivated to the late foundation establishment stage and was one of the top figures. In the past 3 years in the boundless world, the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong had the help of the Universe Light Hall, so they had cultivated for more than 3 years. However, due to various reasons, it was impossible for Su Yunsheng and the others to spend the 3 years in the boundless world under the environment of 10 or 5 times the normal speed. Taking Su Yunsheng as an example, he had cultivated to the late foundation establishment stage in less than 8 years. No matter where he was, it was extremely efficient. Other than his own outstanding talent, the abundant spirit qi and cultivation resources on Yujing Mountain, as well as the mysterious Taoist techniques of Xianmen Tianzong, were all important reasons. However, Su Yunsheng had been stuck in the late foundation establishment stage for almost 2 years. Now, the problem in front of him was core formation. This hurdle could not be seen simply by cultivating for a long time. Su Yunsheng saluted them back, but his eyebrows immediately furrowed. Where is Ing Rosa? Chapter 649. On the cloud peak, the people of the Northern Militant Imperial Court greeted Zhu. Everyone's eyes fell on Zhu. Zhu Yi was still dressed like a scholar, wearing a purple robe with a white robe. He had a gentle temperament and a calm gaze. He didn't deliberately reveal his cultivation level, but there was a faint light shining from the top of his head, attracting the 9 heavens clear qi into his body. He was already at the middle stage of the Yuanying stage. Thinking of how he and his fellow disciples, Xiao Yan and Wang Lin, could kill a late-stage Yuanying ancestor when they were at the late stage of the golden elixir, the other cultivators of the Northern Militant Imperial Court were shocked. Zhu Yi smiled faintly. Everyone, please come with me. My master is on Yujing Mountain. Lin Feng received the Northern Militant First Chanyu and his entourage in the main hall of Yujing Mountain, the guests and host chatting happily. Compared to the Great Zhou Dynasty and the Great Qin Dynasty, Xianmen Tianzong had a closer relationship with the Northern Militant Imperial Court and Purple Heaven Dao. 3 years ago, the Northern Militant Imperial Court eradicated the Tianqi sect and pushed their own sphere of influence into the original territory of the Tianqi sect. In the end, they divided the power of the Tianqi sect with the Great Zhou Dynasty. The Great Zhou Dynasty mainly absorbed the remaining disciples of the Tianqi sect and didn't occupy much territory. The Northern Militant Imperial Court obtained most of the original territory of the Tianqi sect. In the past 3 years, the Northern Militant Imperial Court had also been recuperating and digesting their previous gains. The overall strength of the sect had steadily increased. Now for the Northern Militant Imperial Court, the only flaw was that the left virtuous prince had fallen under the claws of the ancient Kunping in the Arctic Ice Sea. The loss of a primordial spirit powerhouse still hadn't been made up for yet. After all, it was difficult to form a primordial spirit. It required both time and opportunity. However, after the Northern Militant Imperial Court absorbed the remaining power of the Tianqi sect, the number of Yuanying stage powerhouses had greatly increased. This could also be regarded as increasing the probability of a primordial spirit powerhouse appearing. Creating primordial spirit powerhouses from these Yuanying cultivators was actually one of the aspects of the Northern Militant Imperial Court digesting the fruits of the war. However, compared to other digesting, this would take more time. The Northern Militant First Chanyu looked at Lin Feng and slowly said, "Sect Master Lin, I agree with your view on the matter mentioned in your letter." Lin Feng nodded. "This is an opportunity. We need everyone to work together." After the meeting, the Northern Militant Great Chanyu's group descended Jade Capital Mountain and rested on the Cloud Peak. All the visitors and their daily living accommodations were arranged on the Cloud Peak. Aside from the residences of the disciples who laid the foundation, there were also guest residences that had long since been set up. After sending off the Northern Militant Royal Courts group, Lin Feng sat cross-legged in the All Heavens Great Hall. Suddenly, his eyes flashed and he looked up in a certain direction. His vision pierced through the layers of void and reached the Kunlun mountain range. Amidst the mountains, Su Yunsheng frowned slightly and walked forward. The welcoming work in this direction was the responsibility of the Qian Tian Palace's disciples, and Ing Rosa was naturally among them. During the previous welcoming sessions, Su Yunxing had noticed Ing Rosa's gaze when he looked at the disciples of other sections. He seemed to be eager to try them out. Now that Ing Rosa had disappeared, and considering Ing Rosa's past behavior, Su Yunxing had sufficient reason to worry that he might have a conflict with the other guests. However, Su Yunxing soon discovered that compared to Ing Rosa, he was the one who encountered trouble first. Walking through the mountain ridge, Su Yunxing suddenly felt something and stopped. He looked at the mountain peak in front of him and saw a few figures appear on the mountain peak. They were all wearing gold-rimmed robes and had an awe-inspiring aura. Su Yunxing looked at the other party's attire and had an idea. The successor of the reincarnation sect's heavenly Tao. The reincarnation sect was split into the 6 paths of reincarnation, and they were constantly at war with each other. However, the most powerful and most likely to unify the reincarnation sect was the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao had always been known as the number 1 of the 6 paths of reincarnation. In the internal conflicts of the reincarnation sect, the other paths would always join forces to resist the heavenly Tao. The 6 paths each had their own strengths. The Azura path specialized in physical cultivation, the Hell path specialized in array formations, the Human path specialized in mental cultivation, the Animal path specialized in taming spirit beasts, and the Hungry Ghost path specialized in controlling ghosts. Meanwhile, the heavenly Tao was proficient in many of the reincarnation sect's secret techniques. Its overall strength was very strong in all aspects. The reincarnation sect's heavenly Tao was also on the invitation list for this time's opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong. Su Yunxing observed these reincarnation heavenly Tao cultivators, and their gazes also landed on Su Yunxing, sizing him up. One of the cultivators, who looked to be in his 30s and was in the golden elixir period, said, "We are from the reincarnation sect. Are you a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong?" Su Yunxing cupped his hands. "I am Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Su Yunxing. Greetings, fellow Taoists. Are you here to attend our opening ceremony?" A tall and thin cultivator, who was also in the late stage of foundation establishment realm like Su Yunxing, sized Su Yunxing up and suddenly asked, "You are Su Yunxing?" Su Yunxing's expression did not change, but he sighed in his heart. As expected, the tall and thin cultivator turned to the cultivator of the golden elixir period and said, "Master, this is the person who injured junior brother Su in a fight." He said his name was Su Yunxing. Su Yunxing's heart sank the moment he recognized the other party. It happened a year ago. He had left the mountain to train and encountered a disciple of the reincarnation sect's heavenly Tao in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. Su Yunxing found a spirit herb first, and the other party tried to snatch it. In the end, the two of them fought and the other party was injured. Su Yunxing had already shown mercy, or else he would have killed the other party on the spot. For a spirit herb, some words caused a conflict, and it led to a tragedy. "I am also very sorry." Seeing the gaze of the golden elixir period cultivator, Su Yunxing said calmly, "However, your sect's disciple attacked first. Forgive me for not being able to stretch out my neck to be chopped off." The golden elixir period cultivator looked deeply at Su Yunxing and said, "My disciple's skills are not as good as others, so there is nothing more to say. We are naturally here to watch the ceremony, but we also hope to have an exchange with Xianmen Tianzong." Speaking up to this point, the golden elixir period cultivator suddenly changed the topic. "A chance encounter is not as good as an invitation. Since we have met, let's have a spar. Duting?" The tall and thin cultivator beside him immediately replied, "Yes, master." Without asking if Su Yunxing agreed, he directly descended from the mountain peak and arrived in front of Su Yunxing. He smiled and said, "Junior brother Su's cultivation is very sloppy. Let me spar with you." Beside the golden elixir period cultivator, another disciple asked hesitantly, "Elder Meng." The golden elixir period cultivator called Meng Bei said faintly, "Let's test the strength of Xianmen Tianzong's disciple. When we reach their territory, the method of the spar is still uncertain. This place is the fairest place." Su Yunsheng looked at the tall and thin Du Ting in front of him, then looked at Meng Bei on the mountain peak. He frowned slightly. This Taoist brother, are you allowed to call him Taoist brother? Du Ting, who was in front of him, smiled and said, my master has already formed his gold core for more than 100 years. If you are also a golden elixir period cultivator, then there is no harm in calling him Taoist brother. Otherwise, just obediently call him senior or martial uncle. As he spoke, Du Ting suddenly felt a chill all over his body. It was as if a vicious wolf was staring at him from behind, and it could pounce on him and bite his throat off at any time. A layer of goosebumps appeared on the skin on Du Ting's throat, as if someone was holding a knife to his neck. Meng Bei, who was on the mountain, snorted coldly and looked at another mountain peak. Only then did Du Ting and the others react. They looked at the mountain together and saw a young man who was dressed the same as Su Yunsheng, but had a dark and thin appearance. He was sitting lazily on a big tree. He was holding the blade of a short knife in his right hand, and he was holding it upside down as if he was about to throw it. At this moment he was holding the knife in front of him. He narrowed one of his eyes and stared at Du Ting, who was at the foot of the mountain, as if he was taking aim. Du Ting subconsciously swallowed his saliva. He could clearly feel the killing intent that the other party did not conceal at all. The chilling feeling that he felt as if a knife and an axe were placed on his neck came from the gaze of the dark and thin young man. You are also a disciple of Shenmen Tianzong. You are a disciple of Shenmen Tianzong, so how can you be so rude? Du Ting was a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, so he quickly composed himself and glared at Su Yunsheng and the dark and thin young man. The dark and thin young man was Ying Luoza, who was also a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator like Su Yunsheng. When he heard Du Ting's question, he smiled nonchalantly. Su Yunsheng looked up at Du Ting with a slightly cold gaze and said indifferently, I call your master brother out of courtesy, not because I want to talk to him as an equal. He and Ying Luoza were both direct disciples of Zhu Yi, so they could be considered as Lin Feng's direct disciples. Although Meng Bei had formed his core, he could only be considered a junior disciple in the reincarnation sect. Not to mention his master and grandmaster, even his great-grandmaster and great-grandmaster were still alive. After all, a Yuanian cultivator could live up to 3,600 years, and a golden elixir period cultivator could live up to 1,000 years, not to mention a nascent soul cultivator, who naturally had an unlimited lifespan. Shenmen Tianzong had not been established for long, so it did not have many junior disciples. However, strictly speaking, Su Yunsheng and Ying Luoza were the standard juniors. With Lin Feng's current status, it was not enough for Meng Bei to call them uncle masters. At the very least, he had to call them granduncle masters. On one hand, Su Yunsheng and the others' cultivation levels were indeed low. On the other hand, they were from different sects and were not very close, so there was no need to use seniority. Therefore, Su Yunsheng called Meng Bei brother to avoid awkwardness. After all, Meng Bei had cultivated for much longer than him. If he was a Yuanian ancestor, it would be more appropriate to call him senior. Du Ting's face instantly turned red when Ying Luoza aimed at him with a throwing knife and Su Yunsheng's words. Meng Bei's gaze turned slightly cold. His gaze moved between Su Yunsheng and Ying Luoza, and he slowly said, we are from different sects, so there is no need to use seniority. In the path of cultivation, there is no seniority. In the end, everything still has to be done. Empty words will only make people laugh. Du Ting, you should ask the disciple of the celestial sect of wonders for some divine abilities. Du Ting said in a deep voice, yes, master. Then he put his palms together. Boundless golden light flashed and quickly condensed into a light disk, which directly shot toward Su Yunsheng. Chapter 650. Du Ting's magic power condensed into rays of golden light and turned into a disk. As the disk rotated, 6 rays of golden light spread out and rotated with the disk like a saw. These 6 rays of light were not meant to cut the opponent's body or spiritual energy, but to cut the opponent's soul. Ying Luoza laughed and jumped down from the mountain. Su Yunsheng stopped him. Don't do it. You don't know how to control your strength. As he spoke, Su Yunxing made a hand seal and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered together. It instantly turned into a ray of light and shot straight at Du Ting's disc. 8 laws of heaven and earth, penetrating heavens and earth. The light flashed and directly pierced through Du Ting's disc. Du Ting himself and Meng Bei and the others on the mountain were all stunned. Lin Feng, who was on Yujing Mountain, saw this scene and shook his head with a smile. In the past 3 years, there were foundation disciples who passed the test and became true disciples. Lin Feng and his disciples were strict with the test, but the number of true disciples had gradually increased. Through their own hard work and the time acceleration effect of the Universe Hall, a considerable number of true disciples had successfully opened their Sea of Qi and built their Tao foundation. Among them, there were also outstanding talents like Su Yunxing and Ying Luoza who had cultivated to the middle or late stage of foundation building. The foundation disciples cultivated the 8 trigrams Taoist canon of Yi and had a basic Qi cultivation. After laying a solid foundation for their Tao techniques, the younger generation of disciples naturally began to dabble in learning all sorts of divine arts. On one hand, Xiao Yan, Zhu and the rest imparted their own paths, techniques and divine abilities to their disciples. On the other hand, they also started to gather together, working together to forge the sect's basic divine abilities and techniques, perfecting them. They lowered the difficulty of cultivating the divine arts and ensured that most disciples could cultivate it. At the same time, their power was maximized. In a sense, such divine arts could also be seen as Xianmen Tianzong's signature divine arts and divine arts. Of course, this was referring to the low-level ones. Xiao Yan and his fellow disciples kept on polishing and getting rid of the impurities while retaining the essence, and they had some impressive results. The spell that Su Yunxing just cast, penetrating heavens and earth, was the 4th of Xianmen Tianzong's 8 laws of heaven and earth. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others used Zhu Yi's E-Sword Path divine ability, the 2 divine abilities of heaven and earth discord and earth-sky peace as the basic framework. Then they extracted parts of the mysteries of the 8 trigrams collapse, unlimited wind and thunder, all things follow the heart, Tai Yin curse, void destroying God spear and many other kinds of divine abilities and merged them, finally concluding them into the 8 divine abilities. Because of the consideration of reducing the difficulty of cultivation, it was not as profound and sharp as the E-Sword Tao, 8 trigrams disintegration, infinite wind and thunder spells, but its power was also extremely good. It was the basic magical power of the Xianmen Heavenly Sect's disciples in the foundation stage, and almost every true disciple was happy to learn and master it. They were the basic divine arts of Xianmen Tianzong's foundation establishment cultivators, and almost every true disciple was happy to learn and master them. The heavenly wheel technique was created by compressing and condensing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth before shooting it out. Meng Bei and the others' eyelids twitched when they saw this. Although the heavenly wheel technique isn't very powerful, it was actually broken by Su Yunxing in one move. It looked so easy? Du Ting shook his head and pulled himself together. He looked at Su Yunxing with a solemn expression. He formed a seal with his left hand and pointed his right index finger at his forehead. A drop of blood appeared on his forehead. His right index finger touched the drop of blood and then pointed at Su Yunxing. Immediately, a bloodline that flashed with a golden light pierced towards Su Yunxing. Su Yunxing's expression didn't change as he looked at the bloodline that was shot at him. He sharply noticed that the end of the bloodline was actually vibrating in the air. It was erratic, and his spirit sense couldn't accurately lock onto its position. Although he didn't know what the bloodline was used for, Su Yunxing couldn't take the risk and see what was so special about his opponent's divine art. He stomped on the ground and performed the escape technique of the 8 laws of heaven and earth, soaring heaven and earth to evade the blood thread attack. Then, as he opened and closed his palms, streams of transcendence energy shot out and condensed in the air without dispersing, turning into ropes one after another. The ropes crisscrossed, trapping Du Ting and the bloodline inside like a cage. The 5th of the 8 laws of heaven and earth, used one's magic power to control the situation and trap the opponent in an invisible cage, making them unable to move. Du Ting controlled the golden bloodline and pierced the ropes formed by Su Yunsheng's magic power, instantly piercing through them. The ropes were pierced by the bloodline and started to gradually collapse. Su Yunsheng's expression was calm. He replenished his mana and weaved new ropes, trapping Du Ting and the golden blood thread together. At the same time, a few ropes intertwined and wrapped around the golden blood thread. Then they suddenly tightened. Su Yunsheng's rope immediately broke the bloodline. However, Du Ting pointed his finger again. With a flash of golden light, the bloodline returned to its original state and destroyed Su Yunsheng's rope again. Su Yunsheng came to a realization. The other party's Dharma spell was a little strange, but it was not a problem for him. The purple-clothed young man was multitasking. On one hand, he was controlling the heaven and earth divine art, and on the other hand, he was displaying the heaven and earth drawing finger art of the 8 laws of heaven and earth. Besides being born from Shenmen Tianzong's own Dao art, the finger the heavens and draw the earth had also fused slight profundities of the Buddhist sect's Vairocana scripture into it, causing it to be peerlessly overbearing, vast, and grand, and it specialized in countering evil techniques. Freeze! Su Yunsheng's right index finger drew a semicircle in the air and pointed at Du Ting's golden bloodline. His powerful mana instantly froze the bloodline in midair. Du Ting was shocked. Then he saw Su Yunsheng's heaven and earth drawing finger art turn into ropes of mana and wrap around him. Now that he was wrapped up by Su Yunsheng, he was immediately captured by Su Yunsheng. Du Ting clenched his teeth and took out a flashing disc-shaped Dharma artifact, cutting off all the ropes of mana that were wrapping around him. It was a black flying wheel the size of a palm, with 9 curved sawteeth sticking out of its edge. Its name was 9-Winged Soul-Shattering Flying Wheel, and it was a golden elixir period Dharma artifact. This Dharma artifact originally belonged to Meng Bei, and for safety's sake, he secretly gave it to Du Ting before the battle started. He had originally thought of using it in case of an emergency, but who knew that Du Ting was not Su Yunsheng's match at all? In just a few rounds, he was about to be captured alive. Meng Bei frowned. Even though Du Ting isn't the best among the foundation-building disciples in our sect, he's still a top-notch talent. But why is the gap between him and his opponents so big? Other than Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others, Shenmen Tianzong's junior disciples are also so outstanding? Du Ting was a little embarrassed and annoyed. He commanded the 9-Winged Soul-Shattering Flying Wheel to make a turn in the air, turning it into a black light that slashed towards Su Yunsheng. Su Yunsheng's heaven and earth scripture connected the ropes and turned them into a light screen to block the black light. The black light was blocked, and the original form of the 9-Winged Soul-Shattering Flying Wheel was revealed. It didn't fly back, but kept spinning on the light screen, displaying the power of a golden elixir period Dharma artifact. Like a pair of scissors cutting a piece of cloth, it forcefully cut open the heaven and earth scripture. Seeing this, Lin Feng frowned slightly. If it was a real battle of life and death, then there was nothing much to say. Everyone would rely on their own abilities. Other than their own magic power and special abilities, they would use talismans, Dharma artifacts, psychological tactics, trickery, and everything else that they could use. It was fine as long as they could defeat or kill the enemy. But if it was a battle of exchanging pointers, then generally speaking, they wouldn't use any external items and would only use their own magic power and special abilities to fight. Just like the Desolate Sea Assembly, it was like this. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any exchanging pointers. Instead, it would be a competition to see who had more resources. Or rather, it would be a competition to see who was more shameless. In a battle between foundation-building cultivators, a single Yuanying talisman could directly decide the result. Ying Luozi looked at Du Ting in disdain and sneered. "I like opponents like you who don't follow the rules the most." As he spoke, he opened his right palm, and a ray of light flew into the air. It turned into a glazed light screen and directly caught the 9-Winged Soul-Shattering Flying Wheel. Seeing this, Su Yunsheng frowned slightly. Ying Luozi smiled nonchalantly. "This wheel is not bad. I like this kind of attack-type Dharma artifact." The glazed light screen was completely transparent and flashed with colorful rays of light. It was dazzling. From the outside, One could clearly see that the nine-winged soul-shattering flying wheel was flying around like a headless fly inside the light screen. It looked ferocious, but it still couldn't break through the light screen's defense. Du Ting, as well as Meng Bei and the others on the mountain, were all stunned. Du Ting's golden elixir period Dharma artifact was temporarily provided to him by Meng Bei, but the glazed light screen in front of them was also a golden elixir period Dharma artifact, and it belonged to Ying Luoza. Seeing that his Dharma artifact was caught by Ying Luoza, Meng Bei frowned. It's just an exchanging pointers. Why did you suddenly interfere? You've broken the rules. Why aren't you stopping now? Ying Luoza fearlessly looked at Meng Bei and grinned. Who was the one who broke the rules first? Although I don't really like this rule, it doesn't mean that I don't understand it. Who are you trying to fool? Meng Bei's face darkened. How dare you? As he spoke, he raised his palm and 5 streams of magic energy condensed above his head, turning into 5 elephant transformation realms. A golden longsword, a towering tree, a torrential wave, a raging fire, and a towering mountain. After the 5 elephant transformation realms were formed, they kept rotating. The 5 elements supported each other and strengthened each other. This stable 5 elemental reincarnation formed a huge whirlpool that continuously absorbed the 5 elemental spiritual energy in the surroundings. The speed at which it absorbed became faster and faster. The next moment, the 5 elemental reincarnation suddenly moved and turned into a huge palm of magic energy that could be seen clearly by the naked eye. It was colorful and domineering. Heavenly Path 5 Elemental Palm. The huge palm of magic energy grabbed at the glazed light screen aggressively. Seeing this, Su Yunxing took out a greenwood staff and turned it into a towering tree that blocked Meng Bei's Heavenly Path 5 Elemental Palm, preventing it from descending. Du Ting and the others were stunned. Another golden elixir period magic item. Could it be that all the foundation-building disciples of Shenmen Tianzong have their own golden elixir period magic item? Of course not. But outstanding people like Su Yunxing and Ying Luoza had indeed been bestowed magic items by their master, Yu. Ying Luoza's hands changed hand seals. While the glazed light screen suppressed the 9-winged soul-shattering flying wheel, it also released a 7-colored light from time to time to help Su Yunxing's greenwood staff deal with Meng Bei. Ying Luoza's hands changed hand seals. While the glazed light screen suppressed the 9-winged soul-shattering flying wheel, it also released a 7-colored light from time to time to help Su Yunxing's greenwood staff deal with Meng Bei. But at this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the void, and a white-robed old man walked out. The magic energy around him was terrifying. He was a Yuanying stage-old ancestor. He glanced at Su Yunxing and Ying Luoza below and said indifferently, "It's easy to obtain magic items, but it's hard to find the Tao. It's hard to achieve great things by relying on external objects." As the white-robed old man spoke, he stretched out his hand and a strong suction force appeared, wanting to suck the greenwood staff and glazed light screen away. Chapter 651. The white-robed elder reached out to grab Su Yunxing and Ying Luoza's golden elixir period artifacts. Of course, the two of them were unwilling and quickly tried to take their artifacts back. However, they realized that the artifacts that they used to be able to control like their own arms were no longer listening to them and were about to be taken away by the elder. Ying Luoza snorted coldly. "Well, you beat up the young one and provoked the old one. The old one can't do anything, so now you want the older one to come out?" His words were like 2 resounding slaps that landed on the faces of Meng Bei and Du Ting at the same time, causing them to feel a burning pain on their faces. The white-robed elder said indifferently, "It's your fortune that I'm giving you pointers. Don't be unconvinced." "How can I be unconvinced?" Ying Luoza spat. "You're just using your cultivation to bully us. Do you think that only the reincarnation sect's heavenly axiom has Yuanying cultivators? I'm not as thick-skinned as your disciples. I don't need the elders of the sect to step in. When I'm Yuanying, I'll find you myself and avenge myself." The white-robed old man glanced at him. "You haggle over the gains and losses of an item. You're petty and resentful. With your state of mind, not to mention nascent soul, even your chances of forming your core are slim. For the heavenly sect of Shen to have a disciple like you, it's really like a big tree with withered branches. He glanced at Ing Rosa. It's as easy as lifting a finger for me to kill you, but there's no need for me to lower myself to your level. I'll take your artifacts as a setback. Only when you're able to endure setbacks can you be considered to have a heart for Tao. Cultivation is not a smooth path. Today, I'll give you a lesson. Who are you going to give a lesson to? A voice suddenly rang out in the mountains, and the white-robed old man was slightly startled. Just a few feet away from him, the void suddenly split open, and a purple-robed scholar stepped out. His temperament was calm, but it made people's hearts tremble. The purple-clothed scholar glanced at the white-robed old man and said calmly, "Cultivation is the same as being a person. Learning is the same. Understand reason, know right from wrong, pay attention to kindness and hatred, have a bearing when doing things. You can be humble, but you cannot be humiliated." As he spoke, the purple-robed scholar stretched out his hand and directly broke the white-robed elder's transcendence energy that was grabbing onto the greenwood staff and the glass light barrier. The greenwood staff and the glass light barrier, along with the nine-winged soul-shattering flying wheel within the glass light barrier, all fell into the purple-robed youth's hand. When Su Yunsheng and Ing Luoza saw the purple-robed scholar, they immediately bowed together. Disciple greets master. Zhu Yi nodded. Stand aside and watch carefully. Before he finished speaking, Zhu Yi raised his hand and used one of the 8 great laws of heaven and earth. It was the exact same divine ability as what Su Yunsheng had just displayed. It was the mark of heaven and earth. Wherever the magic power went, the space around the white-robed old man was instantly locked. The white-robed old man's expression changed slightly. This is an exchange of pointers between disciples. This old man kindly gave a junior some pointers, and you want to fight with this old man? Your reasoning is fallacious. Giving pointers to my disciples will only lead them down the wrong path. After Zhu Yi used the 8 laws of heaven and earth, he immediately used the warp of heaven and earth. It was as if the world had turned into a chessboard, trapping the white-robed old man. The 8 laws of heaven and earth, which were exactly the same as what Su Yunsheng and the others had used, were executed by Zhu Yi. It was a different kind of atmosphere. Although the white-robed old man was also a Yuanying expert, Zhu Yi did not use powerful techniques like the Sword of Change, the Light and Darkness Mandala Barrier, or the Sage Chapter at all. Instead, he executed Shenmen Tianzong's most basic battle technique, the 8 laws of heaven and earth. Although it seemed a little shallow, it was still a rare technique. Especially when executed by Zhu Yi, it gave off a mysterious feeling of turning something rotten into something magical. It was close to the Tao. There was not the slightest trace of craftsmanship. Instead, it opened up a new way of doing things, pointing directly to the foundation of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The white-robed old man was forced into a difficult situation by Zhu Yi. He had no choice but to take out his own mystic artifact. It was a shining silver wheel. Once the silver wheel appeared, it immediately shook the void. It started to spin, and the surrounding space was about to be crushed together. You took my disciple's mystic artifact, so I will also take your mystic artifact. However, Zhu Yi did not even look at it. He directly stretched out his palm. The warp of heaven and earth turned into thousands of light chains and condensed on his palm. Zhu Yi's palm did not change in the slightest. It only looked as smooth as jade and glowed slightly. In the next moment, he closed his palm and grabbed the white-robed old man's silver wheel. No matter how the white-robed old man tried to activate it, he could not take back the silver wheel. A Yuanying mystic artifact was easily suppressed by Zhu. It could not move at all. The white-robed old man's expression changed greatly. You, Zhu Yi glanced at him. But you can't stand it? Who was the one who spouted nonsense and tried to mislead others just now? Since you can't stand it yourself, then don't pretend to be sanctimonious. You need to know that you shouldn't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. The white-robed old man shouted angrily. A shadow flashed above his head, and a huge figure appeared out of thin air behind him. The figure was dozens of feet tall and wore a white robe. Its 4 huge arms held prayer beads, a water bottle, a scepter, and a bow and arrow respectively. It was the white-robed old man's heaven and earth form. He might be able to endure other things, but this late-stage Yuanning patriarch could not help but reveal his heaven and earth form when his personal mystic artifact was taken away. Zhu Yi's expression did not change. He indifferently glanced at the white-robed old man's heaven and earth form. However, his gaze was like a bucket of cold water that poured on the white-robed old man's heart. The late-stage Yuanning cultivators had extremely strong willpower. However, this white-robed old man felt a chill all over his body at this moment. A long-lost feeling of terror surfaced in his heart. Just now, when Zhu Yi looked at him, he had a feeling that Zhu Yi was a lion and he was a rat and rabbit. It was as if the other party could kill him with a casual wave of his hand. Without any effort, he could destroy his greatest reliance, which was also his most precious heaven and earth form. This glance caused the white-robed old man to instantly wake up. Almost instinctively, he immediately retracted the heaven and earth form that he had just manifested. He was afraid that if he was any slower, he would never have the chance again. The white-robed old man looked at Zhu Yi with a bitter expression. He carefully sized up his appearance and attire. "You're the second disciple of the celestial sect's master, Zhu?" Zhu Yi said indifferently. "Recently, the celestial sect has been celebrating a great event. Your sect is a guest from afar, so I won't pursue the matter further. However, you also need to respect yourself. When it comes to unwelcome guests, I, Xianmen Tianzong, have always directly swept them out the door." His words were impolite. The white-robed old man held his breath, but he could not lose his temper. Although the purple-robed, scholarly young man in front of him had cultivated for less than a fraction of his time, he was indeed powerful. When he was still in the late-stage golden elixir, he could already kill a late-stage Yuanning cultivator. Now that this person had reached the mid-stage Yuanning cultivation, the white-robed old man did not dare to continue thinking about how terrifying he was. "Dao Master Tian Tan, today's matter is really—" The white-robed old man shook his head with a bitter smile. The reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao had received an invitation from Xianmen Tianzong to attend the ceremony. Naturally, it was impossible for only one Yuanning cultivator to lead the team. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng's gaze pierced through the void and calmly stared at a white-robed young man. He did not hide his gaze. Being stared at by Lin Feng, the white-robed young man cupped his hands and bowed. Reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao, Shun Qifeng, greets the master of the celestial sect. Lin Feng sized up the white-robed young man named Shun Qifeng. "At such a young age, you have achieved the primordial soul. The heavenly Dao is indeed the number one in the 6 reincarnation Dao." Dao Master Tian Tan, Shun Qifeng, smiled. "I am indebted to my master and the sect for nurturing me." Lin Feng's gaze swept across him. Sensing Shun Qifeng's dermic fluctuations, he could tell that he was the direct disciple of the reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao, the core of the core. This person's position in the reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao was basically the same as that of Lin Daohan, Yan Mingyue, Pang Jie, Shi Tianyi, and the others in the Taishu Temple. This was a talent cultivated as a future successor. If there were no surprises, he should be the personal disciple of the reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao sect master. Although the heavenly Dao sect master did not come, Shun Qifeng's presence was enough to give face to Xianmen Tianzong. Shun Qifeng looked down at the white-robed old man, Zhu Yi, and the others in the mountains of Kunlun Mountain and said, "There's a small dispute between the juniors of the sect. It's just a little conflict. Please forgive me, master of Xianmen." Lin Feng said nonchalantly, "Let the juniors settle their own matters." He was a person who was protective of others. What he meant by this was that if the younger of his family beat up the younger of another family and provoked the elder, he would stand up for him. If his underling was beaten up by another family's underling, if his skill was really inferior and there was nothing fishy, then Lin Feng would not care at all. After he went home and trained hard, he would go find the other family's underling for revenge. The heavenly Dao of the reincarnation sect was also known for being protective. However, Shun Qifeng could only nod and say, "You are right, master of the celestial sect." Lin Feng withdrew his gaze. Shun Qifeng frowned slightly, but soon relaxed. He left the void and met with Zhu Yi and the others. Shen Qifeng did not say anything to the white-robed old man, but when he glanced at Meng Bei and his disciple, Meng Bei felt a chill down his spine. What happened just now was caused by him, and he had brought trouble to his sect. Ignoring the white-robed old man and the others, Shen Qifeng greeted Zhu Yi with a smile. He did not mention a word about the Yuanying stage artifact that the white-robed old man had been taken away. Since Zhu Yi was here, he did not need Su Yunxing and Ying Luozha's guidance. He would personally accompany Shen Qifeng and the others to the Yunfeng Mirror Lake. Over the past 3 years, the Yunfeng Mirror Lake had been gradually changing. Even the Cloud Mirror City by the lake had been improved and perfected. All kinds of facilities were becoming more and more complete. Walking among the mountains around the Mirror Lake, the heavenly Tao of the reincarnation sect could clearly feel the presence of several demonic auras. All of them were at the Demon King realm, and there were even some at the peak of the Demon King realm. They were only one step away from the Great Saint realm. Shen Qifeng and the others glanced at Zhu Yi and saw that Zhu Yi's expression was normal. When they arrived at the shore of Mirror Lake, a huge black shadow suddenly rose from the surface of Mirror Lake. It was as huge as a small continent, but it was a huge whale at the peak of the Demon King realm. It was the North Sea Whale King of the past. Shen Qifeng looked at the North Sea Whale King, then looked away. He followed Zhu Yi to the Yunfeng Peak and went to their residence. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng's gaze was still following Shen Qifeng, but he did not let him notice. Lin Feng saw Shen Qifeng's frown and thoughtful look. Lin Feng smiled leisurely. Interesting. Let me see what you want to do. Chapter 652. Lin Feng retracted his gaze and turned to look at the handsome young man who was dressed in a purple outfit and a black robe. The young man's spirit was pressing but also imposing. He had already developed the bearing of a grandmaster. He was precisely Lin Feng's head disciple, Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan said, other than some small and medium-sized forces, there are already 9 large forces that have arrived at Cloud Peak, including the Reincarnation Sect and the Heaven Way. They are the Northern Militant Royal Palace, the Purple Cloud Path, the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, the Wilderness Sword Sect, the Celeritas Sword Sect, the Hell Path of the Reincarnation Sect, the Human Path of the Reincarnation Sect, the Red Cloud Sect, and the Heaven Path of the Reincarnation Sect. The Scarlet Cloud Sect was a local sect in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. After the destruction of the Wind God Sect, it was the first sect in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain to approach the celestial sect of Profound Gate. After the celestial mystic realm was established, it was also the first force to express its full allegiance. It was a medium sect. Although it didn't have a primordial soul realm powerhouse, it had many Yuanying stage patriarchs. Its overall strength and potential were on par with Beyond Heaven Mountain. It could basically be seen as the number 1 follower of Xianmen Tianzong in Kunlun Mountain. Xiao Yan continued, the guests from the Hell Path and Human Path of the Reincarnation Sect have been settled. They are separate from the accommodations we prepared for the guests from the Heaven Way of the Reincarnation Sect. The 6 paths of reincarnation had endless internal strife. As the Heavenly Path was the strongest, it was often resisted by the other paths. Although there were times when the other paths would submit to the Heavenly Path, the Azura Path and the Heavenly Path were sworn enemies. As for the Human Path and the Hell Path, they had always been closer to the Azura Path. I'll leave these matters to you. Lin Feng faintly smiled. Xiao Yan nodded his head. After thinking for a bit he asked, Master, this time the internal competition of our celestial sect of Xian disciples as well as the exchange of talents with other sects, will it be conducted separately? Lin Feng smiled and said, it's different from the competition at the Barren Sea Assembly. We'll do it in a different way. Xiao Yan's eyes lit up. That's interesting. This competition will be a test for all of you, said Lin Feng with a smile. As for the true disciples of the sect, this competition will be a test. Those who perform outstandingly, in addition to being rewarded, will also be allowed to graduate from apprenticeship. The outstanding second-generation true disciples will also be allowed to begin accepting apprentices. Xiao Yan smiled and said, are you saying that our sect will have 3 generations of true disciples? Lin Feng said, "If you have good seedlings that you like, you can still take them in as disciples. True disciples still have one chance to choose. First of all, you will have to choose between the caves of the few of you. After entering your cave, you guys can decide how to arrange it." As he spoke, he glanced at Xiao Yan and lightly said, "This time, we are opening the mountain gate to invite guests and friends, and there will be a gathering of heroes. In addition to the competition between the younger generation of disciples, you guys should also keep your spirits up. You have a lot of work to do." Xiao Yan smiled faintly. He, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao naturally knew what Lin Feng meant. This time, inviting fellow Taoists to attend the ceremony was actually equivalent to an alliance meeting led by the celestial sect of Xianmen. In a relatively peaceful way, they would display their own strength, shock others, and constantly deepen and establish the position of the celestial sect of Xianmen in the vast land of the divine continent. During this period, apart from the competition between the younger generation of disciples, the core forces of their level would have to compete with experts of the same level from other forces. Lin Feng looked at his eldest disciple and said with a smile, "Your little wife is coming this time too." Xiao Yan heard that and instantly chuckled. "She should be here soon." "Then go and pick her up." Lin Feng waved his hand. Xiao Yan smiled and bowed to him, then left. Xiao Yan descended from Yujing Mountain and flew towards the southern mountain range of Cloud Peak. When he passed by Cloud Mirror City, his expression changed slightly. He looked down and saw a group of people walking in Cloud Mirror City. People from beyond Heaven's Mountain? Xiao Yan immediately recognized Wu Yunliang and Meng Chaoran, whom he had met a few times. Under normal circumstances, foreign guests would be directly brought to Cloud Peak. Those who were qualified to meet Lin Feng were given the opportunity to go to Yujing Mountain. After Lin Feng received them, they would return to Cloud Peak to rest. However, there were also some guests who wanted to tour around Cloud Mirror City and Mirror Lake. This was also allowed, and Xianmen Tianzong would send people to accompany them. A young man in his late 20s was currently accompanying a group of people from beyond Heaven's Mountain on a tour around Cloud Mirror City. This young man had lively eyes and was dressed in a purple robe. There was a Tai Chi pattern embroidered on the lapel of his robe. There were white lines on his sleeves that outlined the pattern of a tornado with just a few strokes. Although his cultivation was only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, Wu Yunliang and Meng Chaoran did not dare to ignore him and politely conversed with him. Although this young man was still young, he had a sense of propriety when dealing with people. Xiao Yan looked at this scene and smiled in his heart. Xiao Huan has also grown up. I remember when I first met him, he was also a child. The young man accompanying Wu Yunliang and Meng Chaoran was Yu Hongyan's direct disciple, Zhao Huan. In the past, he was captured by the 100 Herb sect and was almost refined into a human elemental pill. After being rescued by Lin Feng, he became a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. Later, he passed the test and became a direct disciple. That batch of disciples had overdrawn their potential. Although they received guidance from Lin Feng, Kong Nanhua, and the others and digested the medicinal power in their bodies on their own, they had the hope of forming their gold core. However, they could only form a yellow core at most, and their path of advancement was cut off. Only a few people had outstanding willpower and comprehension, and they had the possibility of changing their fate. Zhao Huan was one of the most outstanding people. He had the power of a void core, so his cultivation realm would actually increase faster than Su Yunxing and the others. However, disaster and fortune came hand in hand. The result of blindly increasing his cultivation realm might lead him to a dead end. Therefore, under Yu Hongyan's guidance, he deliberately suppressed his speed of improvement and advanced steadily step by step. Although it seemed to be slow now, it had changed his fate in the future. Zhao Huan had advanced to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm and established a second-grade spirit platform. If there were no accidents during the next round of condensing the pill cauldron, then he would have the hope of reaching the purple core when he formed his gold core. At this moment, Zhao Huan had completely gotten rid of the haze of the past. He had grown up and was no longer the snot-nosed child from before. In front of Wu Yunliang, Meng Chaoran, and the others, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Behind Meng Chaoran, A tall young man with bright eyes moved forward with the group at a moderate pace. Other than a pair of bright eyes, he seemed very ordinary in all other aspects. However, Xiao Yan, who was in the sky, had a strange feeling when he looked at this young man. It was as if he was looking at a peerless divine sword hidden deep in its scabbard. The young man was Chu Yang. He looked up at the sky in surprise, but did not discover anything. He could not help but mutter in his heart, "Is it my illusion?" Shaking his head, Chu Yang once again focused his attention on the Cloud Mirror City in front of him. The current Cloud Mirror City was no longer as desolate as it was when it was first built. The houses and buildings were arranged in rows and rows of pavilions. It looked abnormally prosperous. The streets were crowded with horses and carriages. Pedestrians crowded shoulder to shoulder, flowing in an endless stream. There were all kinds of shops on both sides of the street. It's completely a bustling new city. Chu Yang observed the pedestrians. It's not just cultivators. Most of the people in the city are ordinary mortals. Although it was deep in the mountains, Lin Feng had set up a teleportation array, so it was not isolated from the world. Transportation was very convenient. There were 2 arrays in the south and north of the city, connecting this place to the entrance of the Sand Continent City and the Mystic Heaven Realm respectively. The 3 places were interconnected and had a close relationship. There was another array in the west of the city. It was a spirit-gathering array that guided the spirit chi of heaven and earth to gather in the city. Although it was not as powerful as the array on the Cloud Peak, it was still quite effective. It guided the spirit chi to nourish the people in the city. Cultivators could use it to cultivate, and ordinary people living in the city had the effect of prolonging their lives. Other than the relatives and family of the disciples, there were many other people who migrated here to make a living. After being examined by Xianmen Tianzong, they could settle down here. In the past few years of development, the Cloud Mirror City had completely changed. Because of the celestial sect of the Mysterious Gate, many people in the Sand Continent City had started to move here. The Heavenly Trade Pavilion had also set up a branch in the city, making it even more prosperous. Many small and medium-sized forces in the Kunlun mountain range also liked to come here to communicate with the outside world. They exported the local resources of the Kunlun mountain range to the outside world and received resources from the outside world at the same time. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner, which gave these small and medium-sized forces a lot of security. It also saved them a lot of trouble. They did not need to leave the Kunlun mountain range to carry out trade, and they would not be bullied by the big forces in other places. This also made them more closely united around Xianmen Tianzong. However, in the past, the thing that gave other big forces the most headaches about Xianmen Tianzong was that Yujing Mountain was unpredictable. Even if they wanted to block the door and cause trouble, they could not find the door. Now, with Cloud Mirror City and the Heaven Mystic Realm, although their development is getting better and their influence is growing, it is equivalent to setting up a target for those who have ill intentions. If someone wants to destroy them, there is a way to do so. Chu Yang thought to himself, although the core of Xianmen Tianzong is still in Yujing Mountain, and even if Cloud Mirror City and the Heaven Mystic Realm are destroyed, it will not hurt their foundation, but not only will they lose face, all their previous efforts will be in vain. Chu Yang's gaze turned and sized up the pedestrian streets in Cloud Mirror City. This is a path that must be taken for the sect to develop and grow, but it also bears hidden dangers in the future. It is hard to say what will be gained or lost. It all depends on how the master of the Mystic Gate and his disciples handle it. Thinking of this, Chu Yang's gaze drifted. He looked up at the empty sky. Although he knew that Yujing Mountain might not be there, Chu Yang could not help but look up. Qingwu. Chu Yang took a deep breath and retracted his gaze from the sky. His gaze faintly flashed past the back of a middle-aged man in front of him. That was his second martial uncle and also one of the core members of Beyond Sky Mountain. Before this, he was a chess piece that Wu Qingru had placed in Beyond Sky Mountain. In Chu Yang's memory, the destruction of Beyond Sky Mountain was directly related to this person. But now, Chu Yang's eyelids drooped and he completely withdrew all his sharpness. He continued to follow behind the elders without saying a word. his gaze swept across the streets of Cloud Mirror City again. Just like the other disciples of Beyond Sky Mountain, there was only pure admiration and curiosity. Chapter 653. Zhu Yi had direct contact with Chu Yang, but Xiao Yan had not. He simply felt that Chu Yang was a little strange. Like Zhu Yi, Xiao Yan was already at the middle stage of Yuaning. When he was at the late stage of Golden Elixir, his actual combat power was enough to defeat most of the Yuaning cultivators. At this moment, he could almost see through the cultivation of everyone in Beyond Heaven Mountain. For example, Xiao Yan could see that although Meng Chao Ran was very low-key, his cultivation was the highest among the people in Beyond Heaven Mountain, even higher than his senior brother Wu Yunliang. But for the current Xiao Yan, he did not care too much about it. Only that youth called Chu Yang gave Xiao Yan a very strange feeling after seeing him. It was not that Chu Yang was very strong, but it was very strange. Am I being too sensitive? Xiao Yan laughed and shook his head. After finding nothing out of the ordinary, he continued to leave. On the ground, Wu Yunliang and the others were still touring Cloud Mirror City under Zhao Huan's guidance. After leaving Cloud Mirror City, the group came to the lakeside of Mirror Lake. Wu Yunliang and the others looked around and saw a few small boats docked at the lakeside. They sensed a little and discovered that there was a miniature formation set up on the spell boat. People with lower qi condensation cultivation could board the boat and drive it. Zhao Huan followed their gaze and said with a smile, "This is prepared for the disciples with low cultivation on Cloud Peak. If they have relatives living in Cloud Mirror City, it will be convenient for them to visit them." Wu Yunliang and the others smiled and nodded. Some people thought otherwise. Cultivators do not need to be heartless. But they have to worry about their families. What is the point of cultivating? Perhaps it is easy to distract the younger disciples, but it also strengthens the unity of the sect. Wu Yunliang said, "Whether it is good or bad, it all depends on how we guide them." "Everyone please." Zhao Huan took out a jade talisman. The jade talisman emitted rays of light and lifted him up into the air. He flew towards the cloud peak. Wu Yunliang and the others also flew up and followed behind him. He guided them towards the cloud peak. Flying above the lake, Wu Yunliang, Meng Chao Ran, and the others looked thoughtfully at the bottom of the lake. They could vaguely feel that there was a big guy moving under the water. The other party wasn't deliberately hiding its aura. Zhao Huan smiled. "That's the North Sea Whale King. He lives under the Mirror Lake." Wu Yunliang sighed. A great demon at the peak of the Demon King level had actually become a house guard. Xianmen Tianzong was really generous. With the North Sea Whale King here, even if Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the rest of Xianmen Tianzong's higher-ups weren't here, ordinary people wouldn't dare invade Yunfeng Mirror Lake. As they flew, they suddenly felt a majestic fluctuation of magic power coming from the horizon. Looking carefully, it was a group of people, but the scale was much larger than the group from Beyond Heaven Mountain. A faint golden dragon shadow streaked across the horizon, passing through the clouds and also flying towards Yunfeng. Wu Yunliang, Meng Chao Ran, and the others looked at each other. "It's people from the Great Qin Dynasty." The other party arrived in front of them. On the golden dragon shadow stood a stocky, tall, and fat young man. He wore the same purple clothes as Zhao Huan, and there was also a Tai Chi pattern on his lapel. The only difference was that his cuffs were decorated with a ball of raging flames. He smiled and greeted Zhao Huan. "Junior brother Zhao." Zhao Huan also smiled. "Senior brother Yan." The person who came was the little fatty Yan Wei, who had been Xiao Yan's disciple in the past. Now, he had also grown into a young man, but he was still on the fat side. Yan Wei leaned over and said, "This is the Great Qin Dynasty's Emperor Stonefeather. Apart from him, Dao Sovereign Changlu and Princess Xingyun are also here. Other than the seniors from the Great Qin Dynasty, the seniors from the Sun Moon Sword Sect, Constellation Sword Sect, and Hua Clan are also here." Zhao Huan looked over. Although she had not seen some of them in person, since they had the responsibility of receiving guests, they had seen the images of the higher-ups of the various forces. Taking a closer look, the person leading the golden dragon shadow was Qin Emperor Stonefeather. Beside him stood 3 people. They were Sun Luminary Sword Venerable, Star Constellation Sword Venerable, and the Hua clan's patriarch, Azura Dao Sovereign Huxiu. On the left and right of Stonefeather stood a kind-looking old man with a face full of smiles and a yellow-clothed, extraordinarily beautiful woman. They were the great Qin dynasty's Dao Sovereign Chonglu and Princess Shi Xingyun. Behind them stood many experts of various realms. They were also cultivators from the great Qin dynasty, the Sun-Moon Sword sect, the Constellation Sword sect, and the Hua clan. Although some of the cultivators' realms were low, they were not old. They were full of spirit and energy. They were clearly seedlings with great potential among the younger generation. Xianmen Tianzong Snow Wind Valley's disciple, Zhao Huan, greets seniors. Zhao Huan bowed to Stonefeather and the others. Wu Yunliang and the others beside him also bowed to Stonefeather and the other primordial soul realm experts respectfully. Any one of these 4 forces was stronger than his beyond heaven mountain. Stonefeather nodded. Greetings. After exchanging greetings, Stonefeather and the others continued to fly toward the cloud peak under Yen Wuwei's lead. Zhao Huan continued to accompany Wu Yunliang and the others, following behind the golden dragon shadow. As they approached the cloud peak, a figure appeared in the void. It was a woman. Her fiery red hair spread out and fluttered in the wind like flames. It was Yu Hongyan. When she saw Qin Yu and the other primordial soul realm experts, she bowed. Thank you seniors for coming all the way to my Xianmen Tianzong ceremony. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Stonefeather and the others sized up Yu Hongyan and nodded secretly. This woman is brave and diligent. She is indeed extraordinary. Her cultivation is already at the late stage of the golden elixir. With the eyesight of the primordial soul realm experts, they could naturally see that Yu Hongyan's current cultivation realm had already passed the Yin Wind tribulation. 1 golden elixir was perfect and flawless. Once she accumulated enough and stabilized her state of mind, she could attempt to break through the final void thunder tribulation of the 3 heavenly tribulations of the golden elixir and attempt to form her nascent soul. Stonefeather and the others could see that although 3 years had passed in the colossal world, Yu Hongyan had actually cultivated for more than 3 years. However, it was not that long. It seems that if there are no major accidents, this woman will definitely be able to form her nascent soul within 50 years. She might even be able to do it much earlier. Dao Master Chang'e glanced at Shi Xingyun beside him. Chongyun is no match for the junior of the royal family. I wonder if she can surpass Xingyun? At this moment, Shi Xingyun was still in the process of forming her nascent soul and achieving the Yuanying realm. During the first round of the Wilderness Sea Assembly, she defeated the direct disciple of the Taishu Temple in West Hill City. The potential that this woman has now displayed is indeed powerful. The direct disciples of the Master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders are indeed extraordinary. Dao Master Chang'e thought to himself, I wonder what the situation will be like now that she has accepted 2 new direct disciples? Previously, these 2 had also left Yujing Mountain to train. Unfortunately, they only appeared briefly and there were only bits and pieces of news. It is still impossible to judge their potential and strength. Among the direct disciples under Lin Feng, not to mention Yu Hongyan and the others with slightly lower cultivation, even Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others with the highest cultivation realm were only at the Yuanying realm. However, they had already attracted the attention of the entire human cultivation world in the Divine Land. Now that Lin Feng's status was getting higher and higher, many people began to gradually turn their attention to his disciples. Now, when discussing the rising human experts in the Divine Land, most people no longer counted Lin Feng as one of them. That was because Lin Feng's status was already recognized as a giant. Comparing others to Lin Feng was not a disgrace to Lin Feng, but it was unfair to those people. On the other hand, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others had now begun to compare them with Lin Daohan, Yan Mingyue, and Shen Qifeng. Of course, there were also people who disagreed. After all, whether one had formed the primordial soul or not was a fundamental difference. Everything still needed time to verify. However, it was an indisputable fact that Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others occupied an increasingly important position in the power map of the Divine Land. In the 3 years in the colossal world, Lin Feng mostly lived in seclusion, while Xiao Yan and the others often went out to train. Each of them left behind many legends. This time, in the opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others gathered again. Naturally, the importance was different. Your master has gone out. I will receive the seniors from the Great Qin Dynasty, the Sun-Moon Sword Sect, the Constellation Sword Sect, and the Hua clan, Yu Hongyan said to Yan Wei, who was beside him. Yan Wei hurriedly bowed and said, "This disciple will take his leave." Yu Hongyan looked at Zhao Huan and the people of Beyond Heaven Mountain on the other side and said, "You have come from afar. My Xianmen Tianzong welcomes you. Please rest for the time being on this cloud peak. Later, my master will meet with you. If there is any neglect, please don't blame me." Wu Yunliang and the others repeatedly said that they did not dare. Traveling with Emperor Qin's Stone Feather, Glorious Sun Sword Venerable, Constellation Sword Venerable, and Huaxiu, they were already mentally prepared that Lin Feng would definitely receive Stone Feather and the others first. This was also the right thing to do. Zhao Huan bowed to Yu Hongyan and said, "This disciple will first bring the seniors and fellow Taoists of Beyond Heaven Mountain to a place to stay." After saying this, she left with Wu Yunliang and the others. Just as they took a step, everyone's expression changed slightly. They turned to look into the distant sky and saw that in the distant sky, 2 golden rainbows cut through the sky and also headed towards the cloud peak. Emperor Qin Stone Feather and the other Essence Soul experts noticed it earlier. Stone Feather's expression was indifferent while Dao Master Chang'el slightly frowned. The new group of people were from the Great Zhou Dynasty, but they were divided into 2 groups. On one of the golden rainbows stood a young man in a yellow robe. He had a handsome face and wore a jade crown on his head. He held a folding fan in his hand that was not opened. His forehead was full and contained a purple aura. His face was noble and his posture was graceful, containing the bearing of an emperor. He was the crown prince of the Great Zhou Dynasty, Liang Yuan. Unlike the time when he was in the Kunpeng's hidden treasure in the Arctic Ice Sea, this time, Liang Yuan came to Kunlun Mountain with his original body. Previously, because his subordinates used Buddhist Dharma to gather incense, Liang Yuan was reprimanded by Emperor Zhou Liang Pan, causing his position as crown prince to be unstable. But for him, this was also a kind of training. At this moment, he appeared in front of the public again, showing his bearing. Perhaps this was Emperor Zhou Liang Pan's original intention? Although the original Liang Yuan's gaze was dignified, there was always a bit of darkness in the depths of his eyes. But the current him seemed to have been reborn, looking like a smaller version of Emperor Zhou Liang Pan. However, although Liang Yuan's status was noble, everyone's gaze fell on the place 1 step behind him. There stood a middle-aged man. His entire body had a magical luster, as if he held the most terrifying power in the world. This person wore brocade clothes and wore a purple gold crown on his head. His temples were slightly white and his hands were as white as jade, without a speck of dust. The Great Zhou Dynasty's Grand Tutor, Marquis Xuanji Zhu Hongwu. Chapter 654. Zhu Hongwu spoke of the difference in status, the way of ruler and subject. He stood behind Liang Yuan out of respect for Liang Yuan's identity as the crown prince, so he was willing to let Liang Yuan stand at the head and him stand behind. But everyone present knew that the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hongwu, was the leader of the Great Zhou Dynasty's trip to Kunlun Mountain. Zhu Hongwu was the Grand Preceptor, his master in name. When the two met, under normal circumstances, Zhu Hongwu did not need to salute Liang Yuan. Instead, it should be Liang Yuan saluting Zhu Hongwu. But this time, they were traveling together. The two represented the Great Zhou. As the crown prince, Liang Yuan was given the head position by Zhu Hongwu. One of the reasons why it was said that Liang Yuan had been reborn was because he was standing in front of Zhu Hongwu. His state of mind was still calm, his expression calm, and he could control the situation. But he also showed enough respect to Zhu Hongwu. Even though he was standing in front of Zhu Hongwu, he stood sideways, his body slightly tilted towards Zhu Hongwu. Only when the group of people landed on the cloud peak and arrived before the Qin Emperor Stonefeather and was about to greet the people of the great Qin dynasty did Liang Yuan stand up straight again. Right now, he represented the great Zhou dynasty. Apart from Crown Prince Liang Yuan, the other cultivators of the great Zhou dynasty respectfully followed behind Zhu Hongwu. Even the other primordial spirit realm experts were the same. The only thing that seemed out of place was that on the other golden rainbow stood another group of people. They were clearly separated from Zhu Hongwu and Liang Yuan. On the second golden rainbow, the person at the head was a youth wearing luxurious purple gold clothing. He had a golden crown on his head and a bright yellow belt around his waist. His figure was incomparably well proportioned and he had short hair. His face was handsome and his forehead was full. His temples were surrounded by a faint golden blood-red color, as if they were two real suns. This person was the Marquis of Jinghuan, Liang An. He looked at Zhu Hongwu and Liang Yuan with a smile that was not a smile. His gaze towards Zhu Hongwu was relatively calm while his gaze towards Liang Yuan was faintly filled with disdain. Liang Yuan faintly ignored Marquis Jing. He gazed at Qin Emperor Stonefeather. Senior Stonefeather, I came to Kunlun Mountain this time to participate in the opening ceremony of Xianmen Tianzong. Please forgive this junior's courtesy. Finished speaking, he bowed to Qin Emperor Stonefeather. Sure enough, it was the etiquette between cultivators in the cultivation world and not the standard etiquette between the two countries. Qin Emperor Stonefeather nodded indifferently, returning the courtesy. You're too polite. Zhu Hongwu sized up Stonefeather and said calmly, So, it's a clone. When he received Lin Feng's invitation, the Emperor of Qin Stonefeather was busy and couldn't leave, so he sent a clone over. With his strength and status, even though it's a clone, it's still the same as coming in person, so it's not rude. By the same logic, Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou was busy and could not come. If he did not send his clone, then he would at least send Zhu Hongwu. Otherwise, just Crown Prince Liang Yuan alone would not be enough. Stonefeather glanced indifferently at Zhu Hongwu. Oh, from your words, Zhu Hongwu, if I came here with my true body, you would still try to assassinate me? His words could be said to be earth-shattering. The expressions of everyone in the Qin dynasty changed slightly. However, Zhu Hongwu's expression remained the same and his tone was calm. My Zhou dynasty and your Qin dynasty are still on the same side, so I will not do that. Otherwise, if you really came here with your true body, I would indeed want to try. With these words, the usually cheerful Dao Master Everlasting Joy's expression immediately darkened. Everyone in the Qin dynasty looked angry. Solar Sword Master and Star Constellation Sword Master also frowned. Azura Dao Master Huaxiu was expressionless, but he also turned his head and his gaze fell on Zhu Hongwu. Zhu Hongwu was abnormally relaxed. His two jade-white palms hung by his side. His fingers gently spread out and moved faintly. His movements were gentle, like a breeze blowing through a willow. However, his gentle movements seemed to contain an incomparably terrifying power, making everyone's heart palpitate. Zhu Hongwu did not even look at Dao Master Everlasting Joy, Solar Sword Master, and Star Constellation Sword Master. His gaze paused on Azura Dao Master Huaxiu for a moment. After reaching the Void Return Realm, you have sharpened a good blade. In the past, the #1 expert among the 4 great families of the Qin dynasty was Shi Wu, the patriarch of the Shi family, but now it is you. Huaxiu's expression did not change at all. In the past, during the Barren Sea Assembly, he had already reached the peak of the primordial spirit embodiment stage for many years and was only half a step away from breaking through. Later, during the battle between Shi Tianhao and Song Qingyuan, Huaxiu also participated in the Bet and Wen Chaowei's Arctic Flaming Yang Stone. He used it as a whetstone to sharpen his blade Dao. In the end, he successfully broke through and advanced from the primordial spirit embodiment stage to the Void Return Realm. His magic power was profound, and his divine abilities were sharp. There were few cultivators in the same realm who could be his match. Just as Zhu Hongwu had said, even if Huaxiu were to face a veteran return to Void cultivator like Shi Wu, he still had the confidence to defeat him. Zhu Hongwu looked at him and said silently, "Among the primordial spirit cultivators under the central command of the Qin dynasty, apart from the royal family, you are the number one. To break your blade, I will need 5 punches." These words sounded shameless, but when they came out of Zhu Hongwu's mouth, they had a strange charm that made people involuntarily want to believe him. It was as if it was already very rare for him to need 5 punches, which was enough to make Huixiu feel proud. Huixiu was expressionless as he said coldly, "If you want to fight, let's fight. You will naturally know the result when the time comes. My Azura World Devastator blade must see blood once it is unsheathed." Zhu Hongwu raised his eyebrows slightly and did not stand on ceremony. He gradually retracted his originally extended fingers and clenched them into his palms. When he clenched his fists, it was as if he was holding the entire world in his hands. Just as the two sides were about to fight, the void above the cloud peaks suddenly shook. A purple aura gushed out and turned into a staircase, landing in front of Stonefeather and the others from the Qin dynasty. Yu Hongyan, who was at the side, said indifferently, "Your Majesty, Lord Azura, Lord Changel, Sun Glorious Sword Venerable, and Star Constellation Sword Venerable, my master invites all of you to go up this staircase." Since the beginning, Qin Emperor Stonefeather's expression was indifferent. At this moment, he nodded and waved his sleeve, taking Shi Xingyun and the other cultivators from the Qin dynasty with him. He then stepped up the staircase, followed by Lord Changel. Sun Glorious Sword Venerable and Star Constellation Sword Venerable did the same. They used their dermic powers to take their disciples and stepped up the staircase. Huixiu took a deep look at Zhu Hongwu and also used his dermic powers to take his people. He then turned around and climbed up the staircase. Zhu Hongwu did not stop them. He stood there calmly with his hands behind his back again. His expression was relaxed as he watched Stonefeather, Huixiu, and the others climb up the staircase and disappear. Marquis Jing Huanho said indifferently, "Although it's just a clone, the Great Qin is still more important than the Great Zhou in the heart of the master of the celestial sect. He did it on purpose to tell us whose territory this is." Zhu Hongwu's eyes flickered and he said unhurriedly, "Now that we're all on the same side, let's not argue about these small matters. There's plenty of time in the future." Marquis Jing Huanho smiled and did not continue the topic. His gaze fell on Yu Hongyan and he sized him up. He clicked his tongue and praised, "Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. How long has it been? You've already cultivated to the late stage of the golden elixir. With such talent and beauty, it's not in vain that I've been thinking about you all this time." Yu Hongyan's expression was cold. Silently, he said, "Could it be that the Great Zhou came to visit today just to provoke us?" Marquis Jing Huanho shook his head. "Slow down, slow down. I came here today because I was appointed by the Great Zhou dynasty to attend your sect's opening ceremony. Although I have the intention of courting you, I'm not in a hurry to do it today. Since I'm fortunate enough to attend such a grand event, I will naturally be a competent guest." When Marquis Jing Huanho said this, he looked at Zhu Hongwu. "Furthermore, do not look at me with enmity. To be honest, the person who slaughtered and annexed Snowgale back then was the Marquis of Xuanji." Yu Hongyan's expression became colder and colder. His crimson-red eyes were like blazing flames, but when people look into these crimson eyes that were like blazing flames, they would only feel their entire body go cold, as if they had fallen into an icy cavern. Zhu Hongwu lightly swept his gaze over Marquis Jing Huanho and then looked at Yu Hongyan without changing his expression. He calmly said, "The will of the heavens, the general trend of events, the advance of history cannot be stopped. Anyone or anything that tries to stop it will be swallowed up by the flood of history. I know you're a remnant of Snowgale and even more so a member of the Society of the Strong Gale. You've committed numerous crimes in my Great Zhou by assassinating and destroying. I won't hold you accountable today. I advise you to conduct yourself with dignity and behave yourself. Don't make mistakes again and again." Zhu Hongwu's tone was indifferent. "Back then when we were exterminating the remnants of the Society of the Strong Gale and Snowgale, you escaped a calamity. This is your fortune. Since you escaped a calamity of death, you should treasure this life that you've picked up. Don't think about anything else. If you dare commit crimes within the borders of my great Zhou again, you may not have such good luck. You're confusing black and white again, twisting words and forcing logic. A crack suddenly split open in the air. Zhu Yi, dressed in purple and dressed like a scholar, stepped out from within. He calmly looked at the man he called father in front of him. Zhu Hongwu saw Zhu Yi and calmly said, "Unfilial son, you've learned a bit of crooked logic and now you're gossiping. You don't respect your elders, you don't respect your parents. Just this one thing between you and me, it's already clear who's the right logic and who's the crooked logic." Zhu Yi lightly said, "You view me as grass, so I view you as an enemy. Repay ingratitude with kindness? How do I repay kindness? Repay ingratitude with honesty, repay kindness with kindness. The enmity of a nobleman will last for thousands of generations. Unfilial son, you may have literary talent but you don't even care about ethics. You're just deceiving the world to gain fame." Not only did Zhu Hongwu not get angry, he even started laughing as if he heard a funny joke. You caused 100 saints to cry out at the same time, being called a second saint by those mediocre people. You haven't even become a saint yet, saints are still raised by their parents. Zhu Yi also started laughing. Reasonable people, even if a ruler is in the wrong, they still dare to rebuke them, much less a father and son. He looked at Zhu Hongwu. Not to mention, you've already lost all humanity, what talk about elders and sons? As Zhu Hongwu's eyes opened and closed, divine light surged. Unfilial son, you're straying further and further from the right path. Chapter 655. Zhu Yi did not react to Zhu Hongwu's words at all. He only said lightly, "Whether or not I am walking the right path is not something you can decide. Just because you say I have strayed from the right path doesn't mean I have strayed from the right path. You think what you say is right, but it is just crooked logic. I walk the path of the great Tao and have a righteous heart. The path I walk is the right path, but it is destined to be a different path from yours." Zhu Yi's tone was calm, but his words were like knives. You see your path as the right path, and those who do not follow you are crooked. You rely on your power and status to use your power to coerce others. You force your way of thinking on others, but that is just your wishful thinking. He looked at Zhu Hongwu and suddenly laughed. Also, are you really that strong? It is undeniable that you have great power, but are you so strong that your words are the law and you can set the rules for the world? My Lord Father, as a person, do not deceive yourself and others, and live in your own imagination. Silently, Zhu Hongwu looked at Zhu. The one who lives in your own imagination is you, unfilial son, and not me. You think you are different now, so you dare to talk to me like this. Zhu Hongwu's hands, which were behind his back, moved in front of him again. He opened his palms and slowly curled his fingers. Then he stretched them out and repeated this action. But let me tell you, the you today is no different from the you back in the house. Back then you were weak and weak. You relied on me to protect you. You had food and clothing, a house to live in, and you did not need to sleep in the cold. You had books to read, even though the end result was that you learned some crooked logic. Zhu Hongwu said indifferently, "Today, you look like a young and respected genius, a nascent soul cultivator with some achievements. But the truth is, you're still under the protection of your master. If it weren't for your master, I would have taken you down right now, you unfilial son." He raised his eyelids. "To take down Huixiu, I need 5 punches. To take down you, I only need 1. Zhu Yi wasn't angry. Silently, he said, "The kindness of my parents is indeed as heavy as a mountain. But honestly speaking, have you ever felt any kinship towards me? To you, no matter if it's me or the other bastard sons and daughters, we're all just living objects. Like spare parts, we are polished and placed in the positions that you want us to be. In the end, it's to satisfy your selfish desires and desire for control. If you can't satisfy them, then kill them and get rid of them." Zhu Yi's eyes were equally indifferent. He stared back at Zhu Hongwu without fear. "It's the same for other people, such as my mother. In the past, you used Madame Xiao's hand to kill my mother. Now, you want to kill me as well. 3 years ago, when I went to Tianjin City for the examination, I was ambushed several times on the eve of the examination. Without your consent, would Madame Xiao have been able to hire a Yuanying stage cultivator? When I was going through the lightning tribulation, you even personally paid attention. Do you think I can't feel the murderous intent in your aura? Zhu Yi's eyes were clear as he looked straight at Zhu Hongwu. At that time, if it wasn't for my master's Infinite Ocean Emperor Dharmakaya protecting him, father would have acted, right? I have no intention of killing my father. I just want to reason with you. I want to seek justice for my mother. I want you to admit your mistakes in front of my mother. You are unwilling to admit your mistakes. Or rather, you never thought that you were wrong. You think that I have tarnished your reputation, so you want to get rid of me. You see me as grass, and I see you as an enemy. Zhu Yi suddenly laughed. He looked at Zhu Hongwu leisurely. Even now, I still don't have the intention to kill you. But I will personally destroy your beliefs. I will make you realize your mistakes and face your previous absurdity. For a person like Zhu Hongwu, this was probably worse than killing him. Zhu Yi dusted his clothes and said silently, "Indeed, father, you are very powerful. But when you were in the Marquis's residence, what was your level of cultivation?" "The first tier of the primordial spirit incarnation. At that time, I was just a mortal with no qi cultivation." "What about now?" "I am in the middle stage of Yuanying, and you are in the second tier of the primordial spirit incarnation, returning to the void stage. There is indeed a huge difference between the primordial spirit incarnation and the primordial spirit incarnation. If you want to break through, the time you need to spend might be more than a mortal cultivating to the middle stage of Yuanying. But the problem is, how did you break through this hurdle back then? By severing the ties between you and my mother, you then took that final step. You are only associated." Zhu Hongwu said calmly, "What is above the primordial spirit is not something a Yuanying cultivator like you can speculate about. With your current level of cultivation, saying these words will only make people feel that it is a joke." Although the tone of the father and son was still gentle, their words were like knives, leaving scars on each other's Tao hearts and beliefs. Zhu Yi smiled faintly. "Father, don't be anxious. No matter what realm you have cultivated to, when I attain the primordial spirit incarnation, I will look for you. This time, don't stay at the peak of the void return realm. Otherwise, I will surpass you very soon." As soon as he said this, the cultivators of the great Zhou dynasty were in an uproar. This was equivalent to Zhu Yi making a declaration. After attaining the primordial spirit incarnation, he was confident that he could fight Zhu Hongwu, even if Zhu Hongwu was already an expert of the primordial spirit incarnation realm now, and his cultivation level might even be higher in the future. Zhu Hongwu was not an ordinary primordial spirit incarnation realm cultivator. Although he had rarely fought personally in recent years, when he had not returned to the void return realm, he had been completely invincible against experts of the primordial spirit incarnation realm. He had never lost. In the battle of vanquishing the Buddha, he had even personally killed a mighty figure of the great Leyin Monastery's primordial spirit golden body realm. Now that he had attained the primordial spirit incarnation realm, he was probably also nearly invincible in the void return realm. He could even put up a fight against Tao integration experts. Some cultivators who had personally experienced the battle of vanquishing the Buddha remembered that Zhu Hongwu had concealed some kind of power that was extremely terrifying. It was one of the decisive factors in the process of destroying the great Leyin Monastery. Zhu Yi was also aware of these things. However, he did not show any fear when facing Zhu Hongwu. Instead, his expression was extremely tranquil. His Tao heart was bright and clear, as if he had grasped the principles of heaven and earth clearly. For a moment, the atmosphere on the cloud peak seemed to freeze. Everyone's gazes were focused on the opposing father and son. Marquis Jing Huan clapped lightly and said, "We can be considered witnesses to today's agreement." Crown Prince Liang Yuan glanced at Marquis Jing Huan before turning his gaze to Zhu. He said indifferently, "Fellow Taoist Zhu Yi, it seems like you have made up your mind?" Zhu Yi said calmly, we can't distinguish principles. Once we clarify the principles, the matter will naturally be resolved. You were already wrong from the moment this thought appeared in your mind, you unfilial son. Zhu Hongwu flexed his fingers. You must know that a son does not discuss his father. Zhu Yi smiled. Ice and charcoal are not the same. At that moment, everyone sensed something and turned to look into the distant horizon. They saw a wisp of white smoke drifting over towards the cloud peak. Many people revealed looks of surprise. That was because the dermic power fluctuation belonged to a cultivator from the Taishu temple. Did we come at the wrong time? A woman's voice laughed softly. A woman in green robes stood on the white cloud. She had elegant features and a white cloud was embroidered on her robes. It was none other than Yan Mingyue. Beside her stood a man in green robes. He did not look old and looked to be in his 20s or 30s. He had a calm expression. He had an ordinary figure, an ordinary appearance, and an ordinary temperament. No matter how one looked at him, he was an ordinary person. However, after seeing this person, Zhu Hongwu's expression changed for the first time since he arrived at the cloud peak. He stared directly at the young man. Lin Daohan. Fellow Taoists, Taishu Lin Daohan greets you. The young man cupped his hands. His voice was also ordinary and very ordinary. It was not hoarse and low, nor was it loud and clear. It was not ear-piercing, nor was it pleasant to listen to. However, everything he said contained a profound truth that all things returned to their original state and the great Tao was the most simple. He was the Taishu Temple's current world wayfarer of Taoism, the most outstanding genius of the younger generation, Lin Daohan. Behind Lin Daohan and Yan Mingyue stood a few young people. All of them had an awe-inspiring temperament and vast mana. They were all the successors of the Taishu Temple. Beside them stood a young man in purple robes. He was Su Yunxing. He was in charge of receiving and guiding them. When he arrived at the cloud peak, he bowed to Zhu Yi. Master, the seniors and fellow Taoists from the Taishu Temple have arrived. Go back. I will take care of this place. Zhu Yi nodded slightly. Su Yunxing immediately left the mountain and returned to the Kunlun mountain range. In the camp of the Great Zhou dynasty, there were still a few primordial spirit powerhouses. Among them were the Void Return Realm Elder of the Zhanghai Sword Sect, Honorable Swordsman of Emerald Wave, and the head of the Lei family, Lei Lai, who submitted to the Great Zhou dynasty after the Battle of West Hill City. When Zhu Yi and Zhu Hongwu confronted each other, they did not speak. However, at this time, Honorable Swordsmen of Emerald Wave and Lei Lai looked at each other and could feel the surprise in each other's hearts. Although the two sides had been at peace for the past 3 years and the situation in the Divine Land was calm, in the Battle of West Hill City 3 years ago, the master of the Taoist sect, Lin Feng, had clearly drawn a line and expressed his opposition to the Taishu Temple. The Great Zhou dynasty, the Great Qin dynasty, the Purple Cloud Path, and the Northern Militant Royal Court had also formed a united front with Shenmen Tianzong because of the same interests. Even the Zhanghai Sword Sect and the Lei family, which were close to the Great Zhou dynasty, the Sun Moon Sword Sect, the Constellation Sword Sect, and the Hua family, which were close to the Great Qin dynasty, had also joined this camp. Who would have thought that in this Shenmen Tianzong's opening ceremony, even the Taishu Temple would come? Moreover, from the looks of it, they were not uninvited guests, but had come by invitation. If one were to say that Yan Mingyue's position had been unclear in the past few years after her return, Lin Daohan was a core figure in the Taishu Temple. Although his seniority was slightly lower, he was a talent to be groomed by the next temple master. He was a leading figure of the new generation of the conservative faction of the Taishu Temple. Honorable Swordsmen of Emerald Wave and Lei Lai thought at the same time, it seems that this time's meeting is more complicated than expected. However, Honorable Swordsmen of Emerald Wave's gaze swept over the few Taishu Temple disciples behind Lin Daohan and Yan Mingyue. When the time comes, will the young disciples of the Taishu Temple also participate in the sparring? The sudden arrival of Lin Daohan and the others did not break the tit-for-tat atmosphere between Zhu Yi and his son. The two of them lowered their eyes at the same time and did not continue talking. However, the atmosphere became even more solemn. At this time, the space above the cloud peak shook once again. Two streams of purple energy turned into stairs and landed on the cloud peak together. Chapter 656. In the All Heavens Hall on Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng sat calmly on the main seat. In the hall, Liang Yuan, Zhu Hongwu, Marquis Jinghuan, Azure Sea Sword Sex Sword Master Emerald Wave, and the Lei family's patriarch Lei Lai sat in the guest seats. Opposite them were Lin Daohan and Yen Mingyue. The great Qin dynasty's Stone Feather, Taoist Master Changlu, the Hua family's Huxiu, the Sun Moon Sword Sex Glorious Sun Sword Venerable, and the Constellation Sword Venerable had already been sent down Jade Capital Mountain by Lin Feng, settling down at their residences on the cloud peaks to rest. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Hongwu, Lin Daohan, Yen Mingyue, and the others in front of him, saying indifferently, 2 days from now is the day of our sect's opening ceremony. Before that, I invite everyone to temporarily rest on the cloud peak. Lin Daohan looked calmly at Lin Feng. Sect Master Lin, please take care of the desolate ancient star sea. If there really is a way to open another path to the desolate ancient star sea, the impact will be great, especially when the Yao race does not know. Lin Feng smiled faintly. If there is progress, I will naturally inform everyone. Thank you, Sect Master Lin. Lin Daohan and the others nodded. After talking, they went down the mountain and rested on the cloud peak. Before leaving, Lin Feng said coolly, Zhu Hongwu, I originally did not intend to interfere with the matter between you, Xiaoyi, and Hong Yan. But you better behave yourself here. Otherwise, inform Liang Pan and have him come to Kunlun Mountain to collect your corpse. Zhu Hongwu's expression changed. He suddenly turned and looked directly at Lin Feng. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said slowly, as long as they know propriety. Lin Feng indifferently cut off his words, you should first learn what is called propriety. Zhu Hongwu's eyebrows furrowed when he was interrupted. A hidden and powerful aura stirred around him, urging his already powerful martial path to become even more domineering. This state had far exceeded Zhu Hongwu's usual performance. But as soon as he moved, he immediately felt an even more terrifying aura emerge from Lin Feng, who was originally sitting there. The hall of all heavens that he was in and the entire Yujing Mountain beneath his feet seemed to have become one. Zhu Hongwu was the only one left in the entire world. In front of him, everyone was his enemy. Lin Feng's eyes were as calm as water, but that terrifying aura made Zhu Hongwu feel even more pressured. You should thank Xiaoyi and Hong Yan. Because I plan to leave you with them, you can leave Jade Capital Mountain alive. Lin Feng's tone was indifferent, and his eyes were slightly cold. Perhaps I can also shatter your void return physique and force you back to the primordial spirit incarnation realm? However, if that's the case, my disciple will be bored after he achieves the primordial spirit. Those who enter the celestial sect of wonders will have justice. If someone owes something, they must return it. Zhu Hongwu, you're on your own. Zhu Hongwu took a deep look at Lin Feng, and his aura suddenly converged. Without saying a word, he turned and left hurriedly. Crown Prince Liang Yuan and Honorable Swordsman Emerald Wave sighed at the same time. They cupped their hands at Lin Feng and left the mountain. Lei Lai, the head of the Lei family, paused for a moment and cupped his hands at Lin Feng. Sect Leader Lin, I have something to ask. Please forgive me if I've been presumptuous. Lin Feng waved his hand. It's fine. You can speak freely, Brother Lei. Lei Lai said, a good-for-nothing descendant of the Lei family left the family a few days ago and even injured other members of the family. There are signs that he has been heading west toward Kunlun Mountain. Someone once came into contact with him and said that he has plans to enter your sect. The matter of accepting people who want to become disciples is handled by my disciple. As for whether there is such a person or not, I can't give you an answer right now. Lin Feng said indifferently, but he quickly changed the topic. However, if it is true, then it will depend on whether he enters my sect or not. If he doesn't enter my Xianmen Tianzong, then the Lei family's matters will be settled by the Lei family itself. If he has entered my Xianmen Tianzong, then I, Shenmen Tianzong, will investigate in detail. I will not only listen to one side of the story. Lei Lai was slightly stifled. Lin Feng's gaze was calm and profound. If he really is a treacherous person, he will not be able to pass my Shenmen Tianzong's examination. Brother Lei, you can be at ease. When the time comes, you can handle your own family matters. However, if he enters my Shenmen Tianzong, then I will give him justice. If he has no intention of fighting for anything, then it's nothing. If he does, then the sect will naturally support him. Lei Lai's gaze looked straight at Lin Feng. After a while, his eyelids slightly drooped, not saying anything more. Under normal circumstances, if he, a primordial spirit stage powerhouse, personally speaks, most people will give him face. Either way, the disciple may not have already entered the sect, or he may have just entered the sect. They might as well refuse to accept him, avoiding trouble for themselves and also forming good karma. But with Lin Feng's current position, if he really wants to protect a person, Lei Lai is also helpless. After all, this seemingly calm purple-clothed man in front of him just lectured the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hangu, into a sorry state. Back then when Lin Feng's power was not yet established, he dared to go against the #1 sacred land of Tianyuan, Taishu Temple, for a disciple. Now that Lin Feng and Shenmen Tianzong have thoroughly established their foundations, they naturally have more confidence in speaking. Lei Lai's gaze was slightly complicated, clasping his hands towards Lin Feng. Since it's like this, I'll have to trouble sect leader Lin. Lin Feng looked at Lei Lai's departing figure, the corners of his mouth revealing a faint smile. Interesting, interesting. From what he said, he should be a clan member with a very low cultivation level. But even if a person like this commits a huge mistake, he still doesn't deserve the attention of the head of Lei Lai's family, a primordial spirit sovereign. He even directly begged me. Lin Feng shook his head with a smile. Brother, in this day and age, selling a favor is very valuable. The Lei family paid such a huge price, just for a normal junior? Lin Feng's finger lightly tapped the armrest of his chair, saying indifferently, Yuan Feng. A purple-clothed, thin and tall, slightly dark-skinned youth was standing next to Lin Feng, answering solemnly, Disciple is here. It is Li Yuan Feng. You heard everything? Lin Feng smiled. Yuan Feng, what do you think? Master, it's not Yuan Feng, it's Yuan Feng. Li Yuan Feng said calmly. Right now he was already very calm towards Lin Feng's intentional slip of the tongue for some unknown reason. After repeating it for who knows how many thousand times, he continued to say, the junior that Senior Lei speaks of should be involved in some other secret. Perhaps it's very important, perhaps it's a scandal for the Lei family, that's why Senior Lei is so concerned about him. Li Yuan Feng clasped his hands. I have already brought the disciple back to the mountain. When the ceremony starts, when he goes down the heart-reflecting staircase through the cloud peak, if there are any abnormalities, we will be able to see. But if that person is still on the road, it will be difficult to detect. Disciple will go to Kunlun Mountain to patrol a bit more and see if there are any suspicious people. Lin Feng shook his head and said with a smile, no need to be so nervous, just let nature take its course. Everyone has their own path of fate. Li Yuan Feng thought for a moment and nodded. Disciple understands. Lin Feng stood up from his seat and put his hands behind his back. He stepped out of the celestial palace and walked to the top of the Jade Capital Mountain. His gaze looked down the mountain, passing through the layers of void and landing on the peak of the clouds. On the cloud peak, Zhao Huan led the people of Beyond Heaven Mountain to their residence. After settling down, she came out again and bowed to Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan. Then she saw Su Yunsheng talking to another youth in purple. This youth in purple had handsome facial features and a hint of unruliness in between his brows. There was a flame diagram embroidered on his sleeves. It was Lu Xiaofeng, who was also a disciple of Shao Yan like Yanwei. Just now, he was responsible for leading the people of the Great Zhou dynasty to the Cloud Peak. Who knew that as soon as he landed, before he could greet Yu Hongyan, Zhu Hongwu, Shi Yu, Huixiu, and the others almost had a fight. In the end, Zhu Yi and his son were in a tit-for-tat situation, so there was no room for him to intervene. Senior brother Su, senior brother Lu. Zhao Huan saw the two of them and hurriedly bowed. Su Yunxing nodded. Return to the reception point where you are stationed. We still have a lot of work to do. Although the people of the large forces have basically all arrived, there are still some small and medium-sized forces who came because of the fame. Although we didn't invite them, they came from afar to watch the ceremony and have a friendly attitude, so we have to treat them seriously. Zhao Huan sighed. We are so busy that our feet can't even touch the ground. Junior brother Zhou is still the most relaxed and can cultivate in the nirvana paradise. Hearing this, Lu Xiaofeng smiled. Yunsong? You should let him cultivate in peace. Letting him receive guests is even worse than letting Ying Rosa receive guests. He should be satisfied that he doesn't cause trouble. Zhao Huan smiled embarrassedly. That's true, that's true. With junior brother Zhou's personality, he is indeed not suitable to be a reception. Hearing this, Su Yunsheng also shook his head, but to say that he is worse than Ying Rosa is an exaggeration. Junior brother Zhou at most causes dissatisfaction in the hearts of the guests, but Ying Rosa can cause trouble at any time. Lu Xiaofeng smiled. Of course I know this, but with you by the side, Ying Rosa won't act recklessly. He doesn't want others to think that he is inferior to you. As for Yunsong, Lu Xiaofeng sighed. Actually, Yunsong is not a bad person. In fact, he is a bit similar to third martial uncle. They are both cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Zhao Huan curled her lips. Not many people can stand his temper. Among the disciples of the same generation, aren't you the only one who can barely chat with him? Lu Xiaofeng laughed. After getting along for a long time, you guys are the same. Although Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan heard the idle chatter between the disciples, they did not take it to heart. At this moment, Yu Hongyan's expression was calm, no anger could be seen, but his eyes were clear, like dancing flames, looking straight at Zhu. Second martial brother, I'm sorry, after I succeed in my Dao, I will definitely look for Zhu Hongwu. Zhu Yi did not have the intention to kill Zhu Hongwu, but he wanted to break his faith. In the future, when Yu Hongyan succeeded in his studies, he would look for Zhu Hongwu with the intention to kill him, to avenge his country and his family. Slowly Zhu Yi said, although there is no righteous war in the war between countries, and those who bring disaster to other countries are usually heroes in their own countries, Great Zhou's conquest of Snowgale in the past was a one-sided invasion, and it was accompanied by the massacre of civilians. Such behavior is despicable. He shook his head and did not continue. Fourth martial sister, I can take care of things here, you go check on fifth martial brother and the others. Silently, Yu Hongyan said, I'll have to trouble second martial brother here. After saying this, he left Cloud Peak and went to Yujing Mountain. At Yujing Mountain, Yu Hongyan walked towards a rainbow cloud bridge. This cloud bridge led to Yang Qing's abode, Nirvana's cave. Arriving at Nirvana's cave, Yu Hongyan entered the cave and walked in the passage. Faintly, he heard Yang Qing's gentle voice. What you did here is wrong. To transform Yang Qi again, you have to do it step by step. You were too impatient just now. Don't be impatient, do it step by step, step by step. Walking in the passage, Yu Hongyan heard Yang Qing's voice. He smiled and stopped, not hiding the fluctuation of his mana. Deep in the cave, he heard Yang Qing ask, Is it fourth martial sister? Did I disturb you teaching your disciple? Yu Hongyan then took a step forward and continued walking. Chapter 657. After turning a few corners, Yu Hongyan came to the depths of the cave. It was a huge stone room, which occupied a wide area and had a high roof, so it did not seem small or suffocating. Rather than saying it was a stone room, it was better to say it was a hall. The furnishings in the hall were relatively simple. There were a few praying mats in the center of the open space, and two people were sitting cross-legged facing each other. One of them was a young man in a purple robe, who looked to be in his early 20s. He had a gentle smile on his face, which made him look amiable. At this time, he was standing up from the ground, thinking of Yu Hongyan, cupping his hands in greeting, and said apologetically, Fourth senior sister, you have worked hard these days. Yu Hongyan smiled and said, It's okay, you have more important things to do, and you didn't mean to be lazy. Speaking of which, in the past, you have worked a lot in the affairs of the sect, but the few of us have benefited from your blessings. The young man in purple was Lin Feng's fifth disciple, Yang Qing. When he heard this, he smiled and shook his head. It's not hard work, it's beneficial to the sect, and I enjoy it. As he spoke, he looked down at the person who was still sitting on the ground. Yun Song? It was a young man in purple, but the style of his clothes was different from Yang Qing's robe, and it was similar to the close-fitting clothes of Lu Xiaofeng and the others. However, the pattern on his cuffs was a circle, which was made up of a golden semicircle and a green semicircle, like two dragons and snakes intersecting, indicating that he came from Yang Qing's sect and was Yang Qing's personal disciple. The young man's facial features were actually quite handsome, but there was a hint of coldness between his brows. At this time, he was thinking hard, thinking about Yang Qing's guidance, and turned a deaf ear to everything around him. It was not until Yang Qing specifically called out to him that the young man came back to his senses. He turned his head to look at Yang Qing, and then saw Yu Hongyan beside Yang Qing. He stood up and bowed to Yu Hongyan. Fourth martial uncle. After greeting him, he stood still without saying a word. Yang Qing looked at the young man named Zhou Yunsong in front of him and shook his head. This was his only personal disciple. Speaking of which, after the opening of the mountain hall, he and Zhu Yi had accidentally met Zhou Yunsong when they went out to gain experience. After bringing Zhou Yunsong back to the mountain, he passed the basic assessment and became a foundation disciple. Later, he passed the legacy assessment and became a legacy disciple. After spending so much time together, he had a deep understanding of his disciple's personality. He knew that this was how he behaved. To be honest, he was much better than when she had first met him. Yu Hongyan looked as if he was used to it. His gaze fell on the young man, and after sizing him up, he nodded. You've improved again. Yang Qing said, there's not much of a problem with the cultivation of magic power. He just needs to do it step by step. However, I'm not good at physical martial arts, so I can't give him much advice in this aspect. Although I can help him to further nurture his physical body, the cultivation of the acupoints needs to rely on powerful martial arts, supernatural power. He laughed bitterly. In martial arts, I only know the 8 trigrams orthodox fist, and it's only SOSO. The 8 trigrams orthodox fist, like the 8 laws of heaven and earth, was also summarized by Xiao Yan and the other senior and junior brothers. It was the basic supernatural power that the disciples of Shenmen Tianzong practiced uniformly. Like the 8 laws of heaven and earth, 1 law and 1 martial art, it could be considered as a standard. The cultivation difficulty was relatively low, but the power was quite good. It was also born out of the various high-level supernatural powers of Shenmen Tianzong. It could be used to build the foundation, and it was also a powerful practical method. In the beginning, the creation of this martial arts supernatural power was mainly contributed by the 3 people, Shi Tianhao, Xiao Yan, and Yu Hongyan. Yang Qing actually also knew this martial arts supernatural power, and with his current cultivation, it was also very powerful. He said it was so because Yu Hongyan was standing in front of him, one of the top 3 martial arts disciples under Lin Feng. At the same time, he was also one of the founders of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist. He used this martial arts to teach Zhou Yunsong, and it was naturally handy, but in the end, it was not as deep as Yu Hongyan's understanding of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist. After listening to Yang Qing's words, Yu Hongyan immediately nodded. I'll do it once, Yunsong, pay attention. After saying that, Yu Hongyan directly stepped on the ground with both feet, and the ground shook slightly. Her whole body seemed to be rooted in the heavy earth, and her whole body became one with the ground, and her aura became vigorous and stable. The starting hand form of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist, the Kuan-di Mudra, the seal was not made with the hands, but with the legs. When both feet landed on the ground, it was like the earth bearing the sky, heavy and vigorous. Immediately after, Yu Hongyan withdrew her left fist to the side of her waist, and took a fist stance, causing her to instantly become like a towering mountain, standing forever. It was the mountain fist stance of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist. Yu Hongyan's left fist at the side of her waist trembled slightly, but it was not that she could not control her own strength. On the contrary, her slightly trembling left fist was full of a destructive explosive force, as if the thunder hidden in the clouds above the 9 heavens would explode at any time before it was released. Zhou Yunsong stared at Yu Hongyan's movements, and compared it with what he had learned. He recognized that this fist momentum was the thunder fist of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist. Yu Hongyan stood on the ground with her head above her head, and there was a faint brilliance. Although she was in the stone room, she seemed to be echoing with the sky and the sky. Her whole spirit, chi, and spirit were gathered at the top of her head, as if there was an invisible line pulling her up. Although her spirit was gathered at the top of her head, Yu Hongyan's body was extremely stable, and her whole body seemed to be a pillar connecting the sky and the earth. 8 trigrams orthodox fist, the Qian Tian pillar. Like the Kuan Di Mudra and the mountain fist stance, the Qian Tian pillar was mainly a cultivation method, but it also had a fighting method, which was very powerful. Yu Hongyan's left fist was at the side of her waist, and her right hand was slowly swaying in front of her as if she was pushing a mill, and also as if she was going against a huge resistance, stirring the mud of the swamp. It was the swamp-converting sanzhou of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist. Her right arm swayed, and the 5 fingers of her right hand opened and closed, and the fist momentum kept changing. Sometimes it was like a raging flame, and sometimes it was soft and continuous like flowing water, performing the fire-leaving fist and the can water palm of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist at the same time. Yu Hongyan's expression was calm, and she breathed silently, but when she breathed in and out, it was like a howling wind. The blade wind flash is a breathing technique to cleanse one's own chi and blood, but it can also be a movement technique, or even a fist technique. Yang Qing smiled. A fist momentum can display the entire 8 trigrams orthodox fist, but it is not a fusion, and every martial path is clearly separated. Although it is the basic martial arts of our sect, true skills can be seen in plainness. 4th senior sister has really displayed this sentence incisively and vividly. After performing all the contents of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist in a comprehensive way, Yu Hongyan's hands did not stop, and she walked in circles in the hall like wind and thunder. Along the way, she performed the 8 martial arts separately. Her movements were extremely fast, but Zhou Yunsong could see every movement clearly. There was a strange rhythm to it, and it seemed fast, but it was actually slow. After performing the entire set of the 8 trigrams orthodox fist, Yu Hongyan also walked a full circle in the hall and returned to the original starting point. The Earth Mudra of Earth started, and she still used the Earth Mudra of Earth to stop, and her feet firmly stepped on the original spot, not moving an inch. In the hall, on the ground, there was a clear circle of marks left. Qian 3 consecutive, Kun 6 broken, Zhenyang Bol, Sun Xia broken, Li Zhong Su, Qinzhong Man, Zhen Fu Wan, Dui Shang Ke. They were the 8 line patterns corresponding to the 8 trigrams. The 8 patterns did not form a circle as if they were engraved in the void, but it was the combination of Yu Hongyan's chi and blood with her own mana, almost condensing into a substance. Yang Qing smiled. "Thank you, 4th senior sister." Yu Hongyan shook her head. "For me, it is just a small effort. Yun Song has the ability to comprehend. I believe he will gain something." Yang Qing turned her head and saw Zhou Yunsong looking at the 8 trigrams pattern left by Yu Hongyan in a daze. "Yun Song?" Yang Qing sighed helplessly. "Are you forgetting something?" Zhou Yunsong came to his senses, looked at Yu Hongyan, and said softly, "Thank you, 4th martial uncle." After saying this, his eyes turned to the 8 trigrams pattern again. After thinking for a while, he jumped directly into the field, followed the 8 trigrams pattern, and also started practicing the 8 trigrams straight fist. Zhou Yunsong had learned the 8 trigrams straight fist from Yang Qing before, but after watching Yu Hongyan's practice today, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and had a new experience. At the beginning of practice, when Zhou Yunsong practiced the fist, there were many parts that seemed right but were actually wrong, but he did not stop. Instead, he practiced the entire 8 trigrams straight fist, then stopped and continued to meditate, Then began the second time, the third time. After each practice, he would stop to think for a while, then start the next one. As Yu Hongyan watched him practice, there was a playful look in her eyes. She was one of the creators of this fist style, so she could naturally see that although Zhou Yunsong's understanding of martial arts was getting deeper and deeper, he was also constantly exploring, apparently trying to find a path that belonged to him. Drawing parallels and coming up with your own ideas, Yu Hongyan turned her head and said, "Fifth Junior, your efforts over the years have not been in vain." Yang Qing smiled. "Yun Song has his own understanding, I'm just guiding him." Yu Hongyan waved her hand. "I'll leave the rest to you. I'll go to the Cloud Peak first, we'll talk later." Yang Qing nodded. "Fourth senior sister, take care." Yu Hongyan went down Yujing Mountain, arrived at the Cloud Peak, and saw Zhu Yi talking to Shi Xingyun. Shi Xingyun's gaze swept across the Cloud Peak, looking at the houses, the gathering spiritual energy, and the soaring light of treasures. He could not help but smile and say, if it were anywhere else, even this Cloud Peak's mirror lake would be a pretty good paradise. After years of construction by Xianmen Tianzong, although the Cloud Peak was only the residence of the disciples who laid the foundation, it had already become a place to live. In the middle of the Cloud Peak, there was a main hall that looked like the main structure of the Celestial Hall on Yujing Mountain. The only difference was that it was more than half the size, but it was still spectacular. Usually, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others would take turns to go down the mountain every once in a while to preach in the Cloud Peak's main hall. They would teach the disciples how to cultivate, give them pointers on Taoism, and solve the disciples' doubts. Behind the main hall was a series of houses, which were the residences that Xianmen Tianzong used to entertain guests. Shi Xingyun and the others were placed in different residences. Shi Xingyun's gaze swept across the buildings on the Cloud Peak. Halfway through, his eyes suddenly flashed. "Oh? I didn't expect him to be here." Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan followed her gaze and saw a young man dressed in white standing in the distance, also looking at the buildings on the Cloud Peak. The young man was tall and handsome, with a white cloud embroidered on his lapel, which was the symbol of the Taishu Temple. Chapter 658. The young man in white strolled out from the guest house behind the Yunfeng Basilica. He looked around at the buildings in a leisurely manner. Although he was in high spirits, he was well behaved. He only looked from afar and did not approach. Zhu Yi glanced at him and turned to look at Shi Xingyun. "Do you know him?" Although Zhu Yi had only glanced at him from afar, with his current cultivation level, he could tell that the young man was in the golden elixir period at a glance. What was worth paying attention to was that his true age was basically the same as his outer appearance. To have such a level of cultivation was rarely seen in the world. However, thinking that he came from the Taishu Temple, it was also normal. However, Zhu Yi faintly felt that the other party seemed to be hiding some sort of secret on him that he was unable to see through at first glance. If he wanted to find out more, he would need to use his own transcendence energy to thoroughly investigate the young man. However, the young man was a guest from afar. As long as he did not cause any trouble, Zhu Yi would not lower himself to his level. Shi Xingyun looked at the young man in white and slowly said, "Yes, I've only heard about him and seen images of him. This is my first time seeing him in person. His name is Qin Xingyu. He is a rising talent in Taishu Temple. He has been cultivating in Baiyun Mountain since he was young. Although he is only in the golden elixir period, he is highly regarded." Shi Xingyun paused and continued. "He is Lin Daohan's direct disciple. As far as I know, he is the only disciple that Lin Daohan has accepted." Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan's eyes lit up when they heard this. Their interest was piqued. "That's rare." Zhu Yi chuckled. "Lin Daohan is the direct disciple of the Taishu Temple's current temple master, Yan Nanlai. If nothing goes wrong, he will be the next temple master. If this Qin Xingyu is also outstanding enough, I'm afraid he will be groomed as Lin Daohan's successor." Shi Xingyun also smiled. "You don't say, it's very possible." Yu Hongyan glanced at Qin Xingyu and shook his head. "It's hard to say for sure, but he is undoubtedly a genius." At that moment, another guest arrived at the peak. It was a Xianmen Tianzong disciple who was in charge of guiding them. She was a beautiful young lady in purple with a Tai Chi symbol on her robe. There was also a symbol on her sleeves, which was a circle that was half black and half white. Different from the Tai Chi diagram where yin and yang fused and black and white coexisted, this half-black and half-white pattern was a straight line from the center, dividing the circle into two equal halves. It was as if a black semicircle and a white semicircle were put together. The purple-clothed girl landed on the ground. Upon seeing Zhu Yi and the others, she immediately bowed and said, "Disciple Li Xingfei greets second martial ant and fourth martial ant." She bowed to Shi Xingyun and said, "Greetings, Senior Shi." Shi Xingyun smiled and nodded as he looked at Li Xingfei, who had grown into a slender and elegant woman. After Li Xingfei and the others left, Shi Xingyun looked at Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan and asked silently, "Although you've invited the Taishu Temple to attend the ceremony, I wonder if the successor of the Taishu Temple will be participating in the exchange between the younger disciples?" Zhu Yi smiled, and he glanced at Chen Xingyu, who looked like an elegant young master. He understood what Shi Xingyun meant. Although Li Xingfei still looked like a young girl, her actual age was similar to that of Su Yunxing, Lu Xiaofeng and the others. They were all over 20 years old, and their cultivation base was almost on par with each other. They were all in the late stage of the foundation building realm. Admittedly, they were already teenagers when they joined Xianmen Tianzong to learn Dao. In terms of cultivation time, they were not that far behind Chen Xingyu, who joined the Taishu Temple when he was still a child. However, if they were to be compared to Chen Xingyu, they would undoubtedly pale in comparison. If it was an actual battle, it would involve a person's experience, magic power, the power of their supernatural power, the power of their magic weapons, the surrounding environment, the individual's mental state, and many other factors. However, if they were only comparing the difference in their cultivation base, Chen Xingyu was indeed more outstanding. Moreover, Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan could vaguely sense that Chen Xingyu was an extraordinary figure even among the geniuses of the Taishu Temple. The radical faction of the Taishu Temple trained Shi Tianyi, Liang'an, Ding Runfeng, Bai Shiqian, and the others in order to challenge Lin Daohan's position in the future. Zhu Yi said calmly, "Naturally, the conservative faction would not neglect the training of their outstanding descendants." It seemed like Chen Xingyu was the new generation of the conservative faction's seeded candidate. He would be the backup standard-bearer after Lin Daohan. At the same time, he would also be used to deal with the possible impact of Shi Tianyi, Liang'an, and the others. Although that was what he said, Zhu Yi remained calm. He smiled and said, "The Taishu Temple's inheritance is indeed unique. The disciples of the Xianmen Tianzong could exchange pointers with him to verify their Dao techniques. It would be beneficial for the younger disciples of the sect." Yu Hongyan also smiled and did not say much. In fact, she had the right to speak on this matter. 3 years ago, she had gained a lot from the battle against Bai Shiqian in West Hill City. Shi Xingyun took a closer look at Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan. She could not help but laugh. It seems like I'll have to inform Xiaoqian and Jingyun to keep their spirits up. Otherwise, they might suffer if they participate in the competition." Zhu Yi smiled. The rising star of the royal family of the Qin dynasty is definitely worth looking forward to. As they were chatting, the space suddenly split open. A man and a woman walked out from it. The man had an extraordinary appearance. He was wearing a purple robe with a black robe on the outside. It was Xiao Yan. The woman was extremely beautiful. She wore a light green robe with a purple belt around her waist, which outlined her slim and elegant figure. Her silky hair flowed down from her shoulders to her willowy waist. Her slender figure was untainted by even a speck of dust. She looked like a green lotus that had bloomed in the mortal world. She was refined and had a unique aura. It was Xiao Zhen. She stood next to Xiao Yan with a smile on her face. They looked like a perfect couple. Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan both cupped their hands and smiled. "Miss Jenner, how have you been?" Xiao Zhen also smiled and greeted them. It was her first time meeting Shi Xingyun. However, with Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others introducing them to each other, they quickly became familiar with each other. After chatting for a while, Shi Xingyun excused himself and returned to his hostel to rest. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Yu Hongyan, and Xiao Zhen'er remained where they were. By the way, has little junior sister come out of seclusion? Xiao Yan suddenly thought of something and asked Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan. Yu Hongyan replied, "Not yet, but according to my estimation, it should be within the next 2 days." Xiao Yan then asked, "Are third junior brother and fifth junior brother teaching their disciples?" Yu Hongyan nodded. "Third senior brother sent me a message this morning. Yuding will definitely be able to achieve full mastery before the ceremony. However, she might not have the time to nurture her power. As for fifth junior brother..." The red-haired girl paused for a moment, then said, "It should be fine." As he spoke, Yu Hongyan glanced at the void above his head. As long as Yun Tsong doesn't blindly attempt to break through the barriers, he will be fine. His current accumulation is still not enough to overcome that obstacle, but it should be enough for the upcoming sect competition. Zhu Yi said, because of his unique situation, everyone thought it was appropriate for him to become fifth junior brother's disciple. Although his physique is actually the most suitable for eldest senior brother's path of Dao. Xiao Yan smiled unconcernedly. "If you train with me, then you'll become the same as me. Either you'll win a lot or you'll lose everything. With fifth junior brother teaching you, it'll be much safer." Zhu Yi said, "It is right to teach in accordance with his aptitude, but it should also vary from person to person. With Yun Tsong's personality, it is more suitable for him to cultivate with fifth junior brother. If he follows eldest senior brother's path, he will definitely be greedy and take risks." Yu Hongyan nodded. "It is right to be courageous and diligent. But if he blindly tries to break through the barriers, he will definitely die. It is no different from seeking death." Xiao Zhen'er stood on the side, listening to their conversation. She just smiled and didn't interrupt. Xiao Yan glanced at her and said a few words in a low voice. Xiao Zhen'er's face instantly revealed a look of surprise. "I've only seen records of this kind of physique in ancient books. I've never heard of it in reality." Xiao Yan laughed. "This is called a surprise. You didn't expect this, right?" Xiao Zhen'er was very familiar with Zhu Yi and the others. She showed her mischievous side. I know this secret just like that. What should I do?" Zhu Yi and the others laughed when they heard this. Zhu Yi teased Xiao Yan, "Eldest senior brother, you either pay them to keep their mouths shut or kill them. Either way, it's all up to you." "You guys?" Xiao Yan shook his head and laughed. While everyone was talking and laughing, Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi's expressions changed. They looked to the other side. Xiao Zhen'er and Yu Hongyan also looked over. A youth dressed in bright yellow robes and with a head full of short hair was leisurely walking over. He had a faint smile on his face. It was the Marquis of Jinghuan. Liang and Xiao Yan had gone out to pick up Xiao Zhen'er. Now that he saw Marquis Jinghuan, he couldn't help but snort. "Why is this guy here? Is Emperor Zhou Liangpan deliberately looking for trouble?" Marquis Jinghuan stopped walking and looked at Xiao Yan. He said coolly, "I came to Kunlun Mountain this time to represent the great Zhou dynasty. I will be a qualified guest, so you don't have to be so nervous." Xiao Yan laughed and glanced sideways at Marquis Jinghuan. "I'm nervous? From the first time we met, I've never been the nervous one, right?" Marquis Jinghuan nodded calmly. "I have to admit that I underestimated you, as well as Xianmen Tianzong and your master, the master of the Celestial Gate. This was a fatal mistake, but fortunately, there were no truly fatal consequences. I will not make a similar mistake again." Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and Yu Hongyan's eyes narrowed at the same time. Even though the person in front of them admitted that he had made a mistake, the meaning in his words was clearly only saying that next time they would definitely be careful and not underestimate the enemy again. If they didn't have full confidence, they wouldn't make a move. In other words, he would act only when he was completely confident. "I want to spar with you right now. I wonder if you dare or not." Xiao Yan's hands were behind his back, his eyes lit up as he coldly said. Marquis Jinghuan smiled faintly. "I said before that I will be a qualified guest on this trip to Kunlun Mountain. A guest follows the host. If you have any ideas, I naturally do not mind playing along. However, I am a soldier. If I really want to fight, I will not stop when the fight is over. Marquis Jing Huan rolled his eyes and looked at Xiao Yan. When the time comes, someone should not go crying to his master. Xiao Yan smiled, but his smile was cold. Worry about yourself. This time, you will not be able to escape by leaving behind a magic treasure. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.